Give me just a second. I'm going to set this up to go on the live stream. Okay, Amanda? Good evening, everyone. I hope you enjoyed the lovely view of my guest bed with all of the prizes for the next 6 weeks of Tuesdays in the park. So if you haven't won a prize yet, be sure and bring your kids, get a raffle ticket, join us at Tuesdays in the park and win a prize. I'm going to go ahead and it is 7:03. We have quorum. I'm going to go ahead and get this evening's meeting started. So I'm going to go ahead and call the June 17th Madisonville Community Council body meeting, general body meeting to order. If you would all please join me in a moment of silence. Thank you. And if you would all like to join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, wherever you are, pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Miss Amanda for our lovely, unfortunately for the, I think 12th time now, 11th time, virtual meeting rules. Miss Amanda, the floor is yours.
Hello, everyone. All right, so just to go over really quickly, as Kate mentioned, we're live streaming on Facebook. So everyone watching out on Facebook, feel free to leave any questions you have in the comments. We will be monitoring that. Just know that there's a delay, so we'll get to you as we can, and we'll get your questions answered. For those of you here on Zoom, welcome. We've got a few different features for you to interact with. The chat feature should be located down kind of at the bottom of your screen. You can use that if you need to send direct messages to one of the panelists, Kate or myself. If you need some help, we can help you out there. We ask that chat just kind of remains as for those type of things if you need to send more direct messages. If you'd like to send something to the group or have a question, we just ask that you use the Q&A feature. So there's a little button down there next to chat that says Q&A. So just use that. You can drop your questions there. And we'll get to them and answer them as we go along. Lastly, if you'd like to just speak a question or if you have a comment you'd like to make to the group, you can raise your hand and Kate will take you off mute or allow you to take yourself off mute and you can ask your question or leave your comment that way. And I think that that's pretty much it. Hopefully we don't have too many more meetings we have to do this way. Fingers crossed, but we appreciate everybody hanging in there with us as we work through this kind of meantime.
11 months and I still haven't unmuted myself when appropriate. Amanda, I believe all of the available documents for this evening's meeting are in the meeting agenda link. I believe Amanda will post that. Thank you. We'll post that online for everyone to see. If there are no objections to any of the treasurer's report, we'll go ahead and move on to public administration announcements. The fire department was unable to be here. We did have a question for Lieutenant Gregorio last week. Or last month, excuse me. He did confirm that they've made the appropriate adjustments. They had the flashing light at the corner of Prentice and Whetsel looked at. The light actually has been fixed, so you should be seeing that working going forward anytime the fire department is out on a run. So we're pleased to have that update. With that, I'm going to turn the floor over to Officer Brown. Officer Brown for the police department report.
Hey guys, how's everybody doing? So real quick, for the last 20 rolling days from 5/16/21 to 6/12/21, we had 6 burglaries / B&Es. We had only 2 theft from autos. We had 5 personal or other thefts, and we had no auto thefts for the last 28 days. And I'm gonna just say this out loud here. So I just got an email today, and for the address of 4930 Whetsel Avenue, there's a nighttime construction permit that I'm not sure if it's in effect yet, but it's for NIRE to work between the hours from 4 a.m. to 7 a.m. June the 18th, 2021, weather permitting. So I just got that email today, and so I just thought I would share it with the group. Hello?
Is that a request or you're just informing us? Is that a request?
That was my question as well.
No, it's a nighttime construction permit. It's not, yeah, so it's like the permit has already been granted because it's been assigned a permit number.
Okay.
So
Do we have the hours? Do we have the hours for that?
Yes, it's 4 a.m. to 7 a.m. on June the 18th,
When you
weather
sleep?
permitting. This is how it's reading in the email that I received. And this is it was actually signed off by Eugene Lackey. He's the division manager for building and inspections.
And the address for that, Officer Brown?
4930 Whetsel Avenue.
Okay.
Here's what just is hilarious to me. It says that basically their permit can be revoked, which produces loud noise, disrupts peace and quiet of the neighborhood. I don't know what they're thinking at 4 o'clock in the morning, but I think he would probably meet that. So just FYI, if you start seeing some complaints or whatever, they've been granted a permit.
Okay. And that's going to be for phase 3.
Yes.
Okay. I'm sure that they've made their residents already aware that are currently residing at the Mattermore, but I'll make sure that property management follows up to make sure that all of the residents in and around that area are aware for June 18th. That's tomorrow. No, excuse me, Saturday. Okay, thank you. Did you have any other updates, Officer Brown?
None.
Okay.
Other than the fact that I got a couple complaints referencing overtime vehicles that was parked on Stratford. Those 2 commercial vehicles had been towed. So
Okay. We've had several complaints about those, so we're happy to get those removed and off the street.
Yeah.
I did I did want to ask you before we open up for any questions. I was going to include it in my president's report. We did have a notice of application for a liquor permit for 4310 Whetsel.
Correct. So a young man by the name of Antonio Michael Ferrari, and Austin Ferrari, I guess they're brothers, but they applied for the permit. They're transferring from one location, I guess, over in Camp Washington to Bramble and Whetsel at the old was it the old 4301 bar?
Correct.
But it's under construction, so I reached out to them in an attempt to contact them, but I just had to leave a message because they didn't answer. But I was unable to perform the inspection anyways because it was still under construction. So
Okay.
that looks like, from just looking inside, it looks like there's quite a few months out before they're even close to opening.
Okay. And for those of you that aren't aware, that is a new Mom and Them location. Mom and Them is originally located over, as Officer Brown said, over in Camp Washington. I was not aware that they were transferring. I was under the impression that they were actually opening up a second location here in Madisonville. So we'll follow up with that. Were there any questions for Officer Brown, either online or in the chat?
I do not see any.
All right. Well, thank you, Officer Brown. We certainly appreciate you being here this evening.
Thanks for having me.
Sure thing. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Knox over at John P. Parker.
And thank you very much. Good evening, Madisonville. Just a very quick update. CPS is hosting their summer block party on our campus on June 26th between noon and 2 p.m. This is not a drive up. This is a get out of your car and have a good time activity. We also will continue with our meals through the month of June on Wednesdays from 1 to 3, those that are in need. And I looked in the boxes this week and there were some pretty delicious meals in there. So if you need it, please take advantage of it. Fall enrollment is up and running. We are moving to online enrollment. If you need support, you can call the school at 363-2900. We are so excited about June 29th and the bench dedication. We want to say right now in this meeting how humbled and grateful we are that the community embraced the recycling project. And we are excited to bring our current 6th graders, they were 3rd graders at the time of the activity, down to dedicate the bench to the park on the 29th. So we're excited about that. We also have Jumpstart for preschool and kindergarten, August 9th through the 13th. This is a half-day program to transition our youngest learners into school. And Summer Scholars is going really well. It reminds me of pre-COVID, when you hear children talking, working together and laughing. It's just been an awesome week for us. We had a visit from the superintendent. You can look on the CPS Twitter page and see her doing yoga, and also with our STEAM partner. It's been a really good week on our campus. So we're still there, we're thriving, and we plan to continue to. So thank you very much for your support. And we look forward to seeing you on the 26th, if not then, on the 29th. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Knox, were there any questions for John P. Parker specific to the school, either online or in the chat, Amanda?
Looks like you're off the hook.
Thank you, Ms. Knox. Try and enjoy at least some of the summer. I do not see Ms. Wilder here from Schroeder High School. So we're going to transition over to Ms. Amy Kraus from Citizens of the World Academy. Hello.
Hi, Kate. Thank you. Hi to Madisonville. I've missed the last few meetings as we've been out and about and in meeting our neighbors in the community, so it's good to be back. We have full occupancy now of the building on Bramble and Homer. So we've been setting up the classrooms. I'm going to share my screen. Oops. Kate, can I share my screen? Yes.
You should be good. You should be good.
Can you see it? Or is it still me? It must
Still you.
Okay. There's too many little screens here, so I can't figure it out. Cute pictures. Well, I can't figure out how to share my screen, apparently. So we have been setting up our classrooms. Oh, there we go. Sorry, now I got it. I apologize. There we go. Now can you see it? Great. Because we have occupancy, we've been setting up our classrooms and meeting with prospective families and having students come in and explore our classrooms. We have enjoyed enrolling families and meeting families and talking about the needs of their students and their hopes and dreams. We'll be having a welcome parade for students who have enrolled next week. We still are enrolling for kindergarten and first grade and have a grocery card for June enrollment. We are hiring. There are jobs posted on our website. I've tried to spread the word locally. We have positions for our office manager and paraprofessionals. So we would love to have a local community members working with us. So hopefully they'll contact us via the website or my email. I'm in the building full time now. You can come by and see me 8 to 4. You can make an appointment with me, get a mini tour, or try and take a chance and drop in. Our phone number is here listed at 445-4793, or you can reach me at my email. We also are giving guided tours Tuesday afternoon. So if you're walking over to Party in the Park, swing by a little early and pop through the building and take a picture in our little photo frame. You can see my friend Zoe here modeling in the right-hand corner. And then we will be joining Party in the Park on the 29th. So stop by our photo booth and stop by and meet us, and we'll see you at Bramble Park.
Thank you, Miss Amy.
Thank you.
And with that, I don't see Tara here this evening from Cincinnati and Hamilton County Public Library. We do have one addition to the agenda this evening. We actually have the team from Action Tank here this evening to share a little bit about their program and how they can help those interested in running for public office or getting to know more about public office, how to get involved. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Anne and Ioana.
Great. Thank you so much, Kate. I'm going to go first, and I'll talk about City Council Boot Camp, and then I'll really quickly, and then I'll hand it over to Anne to talk about our Historic Preservation Action Plan. So Action Tank, just to give you a little context, is a think tank in Cincinnati. Our mission is that we partner with artists to research and promote new public policy solutions at the local government level. And Kate has been on our advisory board and was really helpful with that. We are now accepting applications for year 2 of City Council Boot Camp. So City Council Boot Camp is a 6-month boot camp for engaged residents who want to run for office or who want to be better advocates at City Hall. We cover the nuts and bolts of how to make policy. So we're not about campaigns. It's not about politics. It's about how does City Hall work and how can you engage at City Hall effectively, either through the budget process or to advocate for various policies. Our applications are open until July 9th at 5 p.m. and I will drop a link in the website, and I'll put my email address, and you can feel free to email me anytime if you have questions. I will stop talking now and hand it over to Anne.
Hi, everybody. I'm Ann Steinert. I am here specifically to talk about an action tank project called Cincinnati Historic Preservation Action Plan. The basic premise is that Cincinnati has this incredible wealth of historic architecture. Madisonville in particular. Madisonville is one of my favorite neighborhoods. I'm a preservationist by training, and I teach history at UC, and I love driving around Madisonville and seeing all the amazing historic architecture. So the idea is that Cincinnati has all this fantastic historic architecture, and there are these tools set up to preserve that architecture, celebrate that architecture, and make it really. Unfortunately, historic preservation has a reputation as a set of tools that often leads to gentrification and displacement. It tends to be a situation like we often experience significant losses, you know, so there's a lot of working in the way that it really should to preserve and protect everyone's heritage. And to make created is a series of 5 listening sessions over the course of the summer, this summer, where we're going to bring together anybody in the community who wants to think about that. Why isn't this system, or how isn't this system working at its best? So they're going to be about an hour long, 3 in July, 2 in August. And we're hosting one in Madisonville at Artsville on July 14th at 6 p.m. And we have a flyer that you can, I'll put it in the chat. Maybe I won't. There we go. You can get more details at the link I just put in the chat, but we also have a flyer if anyone would like a copy that we can, we're totally grateful to Artsville for hosting us. And we're really looking forward to getting a really broad range of community voices to come and talk about, really, we're going to ask 3 questions. What's working in historic preservation in Cincinnati? What's not working? So we're just going to really get it. We're going to just try to have a nice conversation about that and record the results. And then after our 5 listening sessions over the summer, we're going to pull together a big plan, and we're going to ask then community members to come in as sort of champions on different parts of the proposal, and try to move forward some of the initiatives that members of the community are able to generate and brainstorm at the listening sessions. So we hope everybody will come.
Awesome. Well, thank you for sharing. Were there any questions for Anna Ioana?
I'll ask a question. What time on July 14th?
It's going to start at 6 p.m.
Terrible choice of times.
And didn't mention that we're going to have food and drinks too. So you should come.
Yeah, come and be refreshed.
Yeah. Mix and mingle over food and drinks, if nothing else.
Sounds great. Amanda, any other questions online or in the chat? Oh, we got another hand up. Let's see. Scrolling. Nope, hand went down. Hand went back up. Mr. Capister, go ahead.
I did not hear where it was going to be. The sound on that part, her presentation was very poor, or at least from my particular point of view, as if it came across as she was speaking too fast and I couldn't understand a lot of her presentation.
It's going to be, I'm sorry about that. I do talk fast. I apologize. The listening session for Madisonville will be at Artsville on Whetsel on July 14th at 6 p.m. But if you can't make that time, there's one July 12th will be in Westwood. July 15th will be in Mount Auburn. And then in August, we have one in the West End, and on August 15th, Sunday, we'll be in College Hill. So we're going to be all over town, and you can come to all 5 if you want. If you have lots of ideas about preservation, we'd love to hear your voices and have you mix in with all the different folks who'll show up at all the events. So we would love to hear from you as many times as you want to come.
Awesome.
Mr. Capacir, could you hear me better that time? I'm really
Yes,
sorry.
that was very good.
Awesome.
Perfect. Any other questions either online or in the chat?
Someone on Facebook had just asked that a flyer be sent to them, so I sent you their contact information in the chat.
Perfect. All right, ladies, well, we appreciate you being here. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for squeezing us in. Have a
Thanks for
wonderful
having
evening.
us.
Absolutely. Anytime.
Bye.
Bye-bye. All right, we're going to move on to really quickly the board reports. I know we've got a packed agenda this evening with a couple of hot button items. Just wanted to give everyone an update on the parking study. Elishia Chamberlain from MCURC and myself met with Assistant City Manager Jewick and the Director of DCED, Markia Carter, last week to talk about the parking study. The city is going to move forward with the parking study. They've earmarked Walker Associates, who is a contractor with the city, to handle that for the city. They are planning on pushing it through City Council before the end of the month. For those of you that don't know, City Council does not meet in July. So if you've seen all the flurry of activity, they're working on finalizing budget and getting everything squeezed in by June 30th. So looking at that getting squeezed in and approved by City Council. Regardless of whether or not City Council approves it, they are looking at pushing that through on their end. TIF dollars, in my understanding, will be used to pay for the price tag for that, which we're going to talk about whether or not we are going to support here a little bit further on down in the agenda. As Officer Brown mentioned, there is a liquor license request out for a new liquor license for Mom and Them Coffee and Wine. It's a new business that's going to be coming to Madisonville here in the next couple of months, located at 4310 Whetsel. So I wanted to make everyone aware of that. It's going to be a D1, D2 liquor license. If you've not had a chance to go to their location, I know Terry Henry, the Business Chamber President, has reached out to them as well. They do a coffee wine cafe over in Camp Washington currently. Also looking at bringing the same concept here to Madisonville. I know everybody was really looking forward to in-person meetings this month. The CRC is still taking a hard line on number of people attending meetings. The number in our meeting rooms right now is 23, and we could not guarantee that only 23 people were going to show up. That being said, we could not meet in person. We had looked at doing an outside option. Actually went over and tested outside microphones to do a hybrid option with both streaming live on Zoom and meeting in person. It was almost impossible to hear at this time with the cicadas. Also, I was attacked by multiple cicadas and I love bugs, but that was just too much. So we're looking at readdressing as, again, more and more things open up in July. We'll look at readdressing and see what we can do for meeting in person next month. Just as kind of a comparison for what other community councils in the Cincinnati area are doing. Some that have small contingents are actually meeting in person. A lot of people are still meeting online with Zoom just because of size of membership and wanting to make sure that as many people as possible can attend. Before I go on, does anybody have any questions? Great. With that, I'm going to turn it over to committee reports. Very quickly, we are looking for volunteers for Carnival Night for Tuesdays in the Park on July 13th, as well as volunteers for the Haunted Trail weekend coming the last weekend in October. So if you're interested in volunteering, we've actually had several people reach out for volunteer opportunities for their kids this summer, which is amazing. So I know Ms. Tony's going to talk about that in the work program here in a second. But I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Joan to really quickly talk garden tour. Floor is yours, Ms. Joan.
Can you hear me now? Oops.
We
hang
can
on.
hear you now.
Okay, good. Yeah, I wanted three things real quick. One, Tony's going to tell you a little bit more about this, but we wanted to thank Spring Grove Cemetery for for donating all of the annuals that we put in the pots last weekend around Madisonville. They always have a little bit of a surplus, and through a strong connection one of the committee members has, we're able to go to their grounds and pick out pretty much what we want and take them away. So thank you so much to Spring Grove Cemetery for those flowers. The second thing, tomorrow is the deadline if you want to nominate somebody for a curb appeal award. We have probably about 25 entries so far, which is a very nice showing. But if you know somebody else's garden and you want it to be included, just send me an email, beautification@ourmadisonville.com. And finally, the big news is our garden tour. We haven't had a garden tour for a few years. Sophia Helms is in charge of the garden tour this year. She approached 10 different people to see if their beautiful garden would, if they'd be willing to put their gardens on. And every one of them said yes, without a question. So I think everybody's very happy to and inspired to be sharing their gardens. Everybody's worked really hard on their yards over this past year. And I think that if you come on the tour, you're going to be very, very pleased with the variety of gardens that we have. For the details on that, it is next Sunday, June 27th. It's from 12 o'clock to 4 o'clock. We'll have registration tables at Rowe Park. And when you come to Rowe Park, you can get your program with a map of every place to go. It's free of charge, but donations will be accepted at each of the places. The donations would be used for beautification projects in other years. But I think you will be very, very pleased and proud of your neighborhood to see these gardens. So please join us. We'd love to have 125 people come to this. This would be fantastic. So thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, Joan. We do have a couple of questions, but before that, I do want to give a special shout out, not only to you and the volunteers, but also to Alex and Sophia, because I saw the work that was done on Erie. Outstanding job. The flower pots look beautiful. Madisonville looks great. So thank you. We've got a couple of questions. Alex, go ahead. You got a question?
Good evening, everybody. No, not a question, but just an addendum to Joan's about the annual donation. It's a very generous donation. I'm actually the person who has the connection with Spring Grove. Brian Hines and I are friends. He probably gave us up to $1,000 of annuals, which we do not have to spend for as a community. So I just wanted to be clear about that kind of donation that we get. It's very important because we would not have been able to fill those pots without that kind of donation. And thank you also for the recognition at Erie. That was a nice effort on 7 people from the community. Thank you.
It looks great. And please share our gratitude with Ryan as well. And you've got a question, go ahead.
I do. It's directed primarily, I guess, to Alex on the Erie medians. I noticed when I was out a couple of days ago that they needed watering. Is that on the circuit to be watered, or should we bring the bucket to her to water those plants? They look great, but they definitely need watering.
I could answer that actually. And I actually went around Sunday and watered after everybody had planted on Saturday. And then I just watered again today. I probably should have watered yesterday or Tuesday, but I did get in there today, and I'll do one more watering on Saturday. The beautification committee has a rotating volunteer base of waterers. The council owns 2 water carts, and Groundworks also owns a big water tank. If you are interested, and if you have a vehicle that would hold the water tanks, we'd love to bring you into our rotation. But we do keep those 30 pots watered throughout the summer. Yes.
Thank you, Joan. Amanda,
Sure.
were there any questions for Joan online or in the chat?
I do not see any.
All right. Well, thank you, Ms. Joan. As always, we appreciate all the efforts of both you and your committee. You guys are doing an amazing job.
Thank you.
With that, I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Tony, who's got the other committee who's doing an amazing job. I know they were helping out this weekend. Ms. Tony, Youth Committee update. Did we lose you? Ms. Tony, unmute yourself.
Thank you. I'm kind of impressed with it. I mean, the kids enjoy working with the people from beautification, which I'm one of the people from beautification, but I bounce back and forth, so Joan doesn't see me much, except for that. Actually, we used to have like 10 or 12 kids each year to work for summer employment. And I guess I did a little something different this year, and I didn't know it would work. I went on to our web pages. We actually have 21 kids working this summer. We had 14 work on the 12th that worked with different people from the beautification committee. Their parents were really into this. It's really a different feel this year. And I don't know if it had to do with kids being locked in so much, you know, for this year, but they came out, they participated, they had a good time. And actually, we're going to be working through July 31st from the way it looks now, because we've completed that, but we have a lot of other weeding to do and parks to do, mulching, the streetscape stuff we have to do. So we'll still be busy for a while. And we did one thing different this year, which we're going to continue on next year. We reached out to a business to see if they would be interested in having a couple of the students to learn something about entrepreneurship, how businesses are run, what's the important, all those types of things. So we got in touch with Shantae at the boutique, and she took 2 girls to be there 3 hours each, 3 times during the summer employment. And today she let me know that it was a great thing. She said, the girls are showing interest, they're real helpful. And I'm hoping that next year when we do this again, that I can reach out to more businesses to do the same thing. Because if it's only 3 hours a day, it's still impressive to our students. The other part of this is my numbers were going down because everybody's graduated, and the Madisonville Youth Community Council had like 5 kids in it. And so now, because of the summer employment, the community council is building again. And I mean, this is really helpful. I talked to all these parents I'm talking to are new, and they're all involved, and they were willing to share their kids with me. So I feel really blessed to be able to touch any of these kids. And I feel thankful that the people from beautification were willing to work and take these kids and show them what to do. And from that, I'm hoping we have some great things planned. I'll be getting back with people in the community to see about other things we can do if we have the funds. And I'm just really happy this summer and saying thank you to everybody that was involved.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Tony. Were there any questions for Ms. Tony?
No.
All right. We're gonna chug along. There's a membership update. Don't forget, last day to qualify to become a member to qualify for run for office is today. Must attend 4 meetings prior to the November election. So if you're watching and you're not here and you want to run for office, pay your dues and show up right quick. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Carrie, our transportation chair. Carrie's got a quick update about the community bike rack. The floor is yours.
Thanks. Should be having a flyer posted around the neighborhood this weekend and posted on social media about the bike ride next Saturday. We'll start at Bramble Park at 10 a.m. I've been riding around the neighborhood trying to find the best kind of route that would be safe and comfortable while going through multiple parts of the neighborhood. So the goal here is to have fun, but to see different parts of the neighborhood, see what kind of challenges people might have, how it's different in different sections. It was kind of hard to pick a route that wasn't, too hard or would be on a high speed limit road for too long. So it's pretty comfortable ride. I think Settle Street was not Settle Street, Stewart Avenue might be one of the hardest parts. But it's gonna be casual. So anybody of all skills are welcome, and we'll end back at Bramble Park and should take no more than 45 minutes. So look out for that flyer. Also, one more thing for this next fiscal year's request for safety improvements. I did contact the city about what's called the traffic calming budget, which is what they usually use for speed humps. And that has been funded in several years, but it's looking like the city's going to fund it this coming year. And the city staff that I talked to said that they will probably update the program, modernize the program, because right now, all right, you have to do like the whole flyers, you have to get the petition signed, and there's the rules on where they can be installed. It's very narrow. And so, you know, it's not data driven anyway, because like sometimes we got plenty of streets in our neighborhood that are fairly obvious that need traffic calming, right? Because like there is a strong history of collision. We should not be telling the city to fix this, right? So we can talk more about it at my committee meeting next Thursday at 6:30 on Zoom. The link is in the event description on Facebook, or you can always email me at transportation@ourmadisonville.com. But I'll have hopefully a big positive update, hopefully next month about it. That's it.
Thank you, Carrie. And it took 50 minutes because I had to walk up Stewart Hill, the bike ride. If I can ride it, then anybody can. So we hope you all come out and enjoy a nice bike ride through the neighborhood. With that, Mr. Ty, I did see your question. Mr. Ty asked a question unrelated to committees about how many liquor licenses in Madisonville are allowed by state law, noting that moving the liquor licenses are always a problem. The local community loses control and the existing licenses are less available. Again, also the state legislature has removed the exemption for Zoom meetings for government meetings starting July 1st. I think we do fall into that category. I'm going to answer your last question first. I am aware they've removed the Zoom meeting exemption. We're still trying to work with the city because our place of gathering is a facility that does, at this point in time, does not allow for more than 23 people in the room in which we meet. So we are, again, going to work to find a solution for that. We'll keep everyone posted. In regards to the liquor licenses, if I'm not mistaken, I believe there are still, not including liquor licenses that are transferring, there are still 8 liquor licenses available in the Madisonville Business District specifically, based on provisions that were set forth for an entertainment district. So at this point, those are still all available. How this additional one will affect that, I'm not sure, but I will look into that and find out an answer for you. And with that, if there are no other committee questions or any questions for Carrie, I'm sorry, I didn't ask anybody questions for Carrie. If there are no questions for Carrie or no questions online or in the chat, we'll go ahead and turn it over to our agency announcements. I believe Ms. Kathy is here from Artsville, so I'm going to turn it over to her.
Hi, good evening, everybody. Yeah, we don't have a lot today, but I did want to just kind of let folks know that we did have a test run on salsa last Tuesday, which was extremely successful. So we're working with those folks to possibly bring salsa back into the building on a regular basis. That was a lot of fun if you missed it. So we're going to try and do that. There is also currently a film camp in the building that will be there for the next couple of weeks. I think that total they're 4 weeks. They're there every day. If you see a bunch of kids running around the community with cameras, it is that film camp. They are creating their own documentary and they are filming it and will present that at the end of the camp. There's also another film camp that will come in August. That film camp is sponsored by Kappa. And so we did that last year, which was very successful. So they are coming back to work with us. We're also working with a young lady here in the community who is a local playwright and is very interested in performing and putting on her own stage play. So we're working to see if we can't make that happen for her. Other than that, we're very busy with some things going on and lots of activity in the building, and we're excited for that. Kate, I'm going to go ahead and do the weed and see, which is we don't have anything there this week to report. So that's it for us.
Thank you. Were there any questions for Artsville? And I will bring it up. There was a question last meeting about whether or not we had done a letter of support for Artsville. I actually had said that we had not done a letter of support. I actually stand corrected. We did actually do a letter of support last May for the LED lighting for the city building. There was a question about whether or not Kathy had actually voted. I actually went back and looked at the polls because it's a cool thing about us having the webinar. We can actually pull the polls as needed. We typically, in a regular meeting, don't keep track of that. So it's a nice added feature. No one that's associated with Artsville actually voted for that request. So there was that point of clarification. So I wanted to make that known. With that, I don't see that Ms. Jill is here from the Children's Home. Ms. Terry, are you available to give an update for Business Chamber? I'm not sure if she is or not.
Kate, I don't know if she is or not. I don't know if she sent you any information or anything in regards to not.
I feel like she might have. Give me just she did actually. She did. Next monthly meeting, their monthly meeting for the Business Chamber is going to be July 13th via Zoom from 9 to 10. A new member update, Bees Barbecue is the newest member over there on 5910 Chandler. They've got a total of 57 Business Chamber members, which is awesome. They're currently updating their website, which is going to be including a member directory, updated benefits, payment options, and an event calendar. So for those of you that were looking for information on what businesses were involved in the Business Chamber, that's coming soon. So that's a pretty cool feature to have. Kathy, there was a question for you. Someone asked if Artsville's nonprofit status was in good standing with the state.
Absolutely, it is.
Thank you.
If they have any questions, they can contact me personally.
Okay. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Miss Elishia for MCURC. Sorry. I was thrown off by your wavy hair. I was like, who are you? MCURC, go ahead.
I'm the representative of humidity tonight, so there's that. So MCURC is really busy and we're working on all the boring stuff that you actually don't want to hear about that makes us able to tell you about all the really cool stuff you do want to hear about hopefully next month. We are partnering with MCC on some activities. We are partnering with NBC on some activities. We're working on grants. Hopefully we have a lot of really great news to bring to you in July and August. But for right now, I wanted to let everybody know that we should have some very cool announcements coming out about our Jazz and Barbecue Fest. Keep your calendars marked for October 2nd. It looks like the event planner had made some phone calls and we've got some really cool announcements regarding who will be playing the event. And I think everybody's going to be extremely happy. Also, if you are a local barbecue business, because we have so many, you're going to be getting a call from our event planner or from Jordan McKittrick probably in the next week or so. And I am hoping that you will all participate and serve your awesome barbecue, because from what I understand, it sells out. This will be my first one that's not virtual with you all, so this will be a cool experience for me too. We did just get accepted into the pollinator garden program with the Cincinnati Zoo. We're very excited about that. So we're gonna have some information coming out about that in the MCURC newsletter. We'll also be kind of going over kind of what we've put into our garden. This is a really cool thing that happened under prior leadership. I believe that Sarah Sheets and Matt Strauss were instrumental in bringing this garden. I did want to say I was a little disappointed. Somebody kind of came in and I think they thought that there were weeds and maybe they don't understand what a pollinator garden is, and they cut some of our flowers, which MCURC, you know, we had to spend money to put that garden in. We also want to support all of our little critter friends, butterflies and bees. We're helping them stay alive. So if you have questions about the garden, just call and say, hey, look, is this, are you dealing with scraggly weeds, or is it maybe this is a pollinator garden? Because we'd love to talk to you about it and make sure you understand what we're doing. And then also, if you're interested, we can help you with your butterfly gardens. Model laundry. We received 3 phone calls letting us know that you felt the grass was high. So I believe that the grass was cut either yesterday or today on the portion that is the Cincinnati Port Authority's property. So just so you know, that portion's done. The other 2 are privately owned. So we can't really do much about that. If you don't have contact for the property owners, at that point, contact the city. We've been getting a lot of calls about different properties. That's really not what MCURC does, but of course, we're happy to help direct you into some ways maybe you can talk to your neighbors if you're wondering why they have high grass. I know MCURC was one of those neighbors because our backlog on trying to get the lawn mowing service out was a very real problem. But just make sure, call and ask people. You know, sometimes you might find out your neighbor's sick, or, you know, maybe they've been out of town. I don't know. I think it's always nicer as a community if we talk to each other really politely. And then if somebody's just a jerk about it, then you can take your next steps and call the city. So that's my friendly reminder on just building community as opposed to building animosity. Otherwise, we'll have a lot of great announcements coming hopefully next month. And in the meantime, we're starting off summer, I think officially as of this coming weekend. So wear your sunscreen, be safe, enjoy yourselves, and have some great vacations.
Doing it again, talking without unmuting. Thank you, Elishia. Any questions for MCURC online or in the chat?
Nope.
I made it easy. All right, I'm gonna turn it over to Mr. TJ with Meek. TJ, the floor is yours.
All right, can everybody hear me?
Yes, sir.
All right, good evening, everyone. Just a few announcements here from Meek. This Tuesday, we'll have our second distribution. It'll be evening hours, so June 22nd from 2 to 6 p.m. As long as you live in Madisonville, you will definitely be served food. Other news, though, we will be having Haircuts from the Heart coming back. It's free haircuts open to the public community in Madisonville. That is starting July 6th. It'll be the first Tuesday of each month, and that'll be from 1 to 4 p.m. That's all I have. Thanks for the time, and everyone have a great night.
Thank you, TJ. Any questions for TJ before we let him go? All righty. With that, we are going to go ahead and open it up to, I almost said new business, to old business. So Community Council was notified just to give history for everybody that might not have been around a couple of years ago. We had done kind of a massive TIF allocation. We had earmarked TIF for sidewalk infrastructure for matching program for sidewalk from the MedPace project up to Stewart. We had earmarked TIF dollars for phase 1 and phase 2. We'd earmarked $100,000 for the 6012 project. Still waiting on one of the projects, and we do this to earmark the TIF dollars so we make sure that it's not used for other projects. It's not just in an open pot, because we know that these are the projects that the neighborhood wants to do. Was notified late last week that there's a change in the scope of project for 6012. So we had earmarked $100,000 of that TIF fund to go for a residential restructure for the residential portion of that building. Like I said, there's been a change in scope of project for that building. So we have the opportunity to reallocate $100,000 of the TIF. This is separate from what's currently sitting in unallocated funds with the TIF dollars. Some of you may have attended the community engagement portion for the Sierra lot. So this is separate from this. This is money that was previously earmarked. We have the opportunity to basically reallocate this for other projects. And in this case, these are projects that were previously voted on or supported by the community council. The first being the parking study that's been requested not only by our small businesses, but by residents, as well as developers that are going to be coming into the neighborhood. The price tag for that is $37,500. The second reallocation opportunity is for the artistic bike racks for the business district. This was previously supported by the April vote for MBDIP funds. Unfortunately, that proposal was not funded with MBDIP funds, but it is eligible to be funded through the TIF allocation. So we had previously unanimously approved the support for that project, and that was a $25,000 price tag for that. And then taking the remaining $37,500 and earmarking that specifically to affordable housing. That wouldn't mean that that would be the only money going to affordable housing, but we wanted to make sure that that money was specifically earmarked. Adding that to monies that are already, in the TIF already allocated to affordable housing per the city ordinances that came across this past year. Charlie, as our resident quasi-parliamentarian, I'm going to ask you the question so that we're following correct protocol. Do we want to open up the motion to allocate all three, or do each one separately for discussion?
Since we've not had any discussion on any of the three, I would start right now with all three as a lump, and then we'll figure out if we need to bifurcate any of the three.
Okay. Per our Vice President Charlie, if I could just get a hand if somebody would like to make a motion to open up the discussion for reallocating the TIF monies for those three projects. We could go ahead and open up a motion so we can get discussion going. Ms. Tony has made the first motion. Before I even ask for a second, we have Alex as a second. We'll go ahead and open it up for discussion. I'm going to put both of your hands down, and then if you have questions, then we can go from there. And Alex, you put your hand back up, so I'm assuming you have a question, so go ahead.
I don't, but I guess I'll take the forum. I'll make a question up.
Okay.
So at this point, we're lumping all three together. Is that correct?
For the sake of discussion, then we can
Okay.
decide at that point if we want to say we only want to allocate for X or Y or Z, or do all three at the same time.
Okay, so I guess I don't have a question, but of the three, I'm still going to have a sticky wicket about the parking study and allocating funds for a parking study. It seems like we know what the parking is. I know it's an issue among certain members and the community, but it seems to be that the TIF money might be well served in other areas than putting it into a parking study. There's ample parking, I believe, within the community. All the church parking, all that parking along Sierra Park from my house down to the School of Rock. There's enough parking that if Pearl Jam decided to do a concert in Madisonville, we'd be able to support that community. So hopefully we can reallocate those parking funds to something that was better serving our community. That's my sense. Thank you.
Thank you.
Kate, we do have a question in the Q&A, and then I also have one out on Facebook.
Okay. The question in the Q&A, I'm going to put Elishia on the spot because that's a project directly tied to MCURC. It's what's the change in scope for work for 6012?
The change in work is the same change of work that was discussed well over a year ago. So it's not a new change in work. It's just when the three entities, MCC, MCURC, and MBC all voted to allocate these funds, which just so everybody knows, that was a joint effort. Those three organizations got together and kind of discussed what they were getting from the community. So they all voted the same way. That was in 2019. Last year, it was decided by the MCURC board, which I think we discussed this at a meeting, that the building would be sold. This was to make sure that we had the best end use of the building and that it was brought to productive use. And with that, there would be no residential component on the third floor in the immediate future. The property owner is not opposed to exploring that in the future. However, we don't need to allocate TIF funds for that purpose. It was just, we never took an active approach to changing this when we probably should have done this, I don't know, like last July.
Okay. Thank you, Elishia. Looks like we've got another question. Naima had a question. Go ahead.
Hi, thanks, Kate. I had a question about the allocating money for the parking study. Maybe I misunderstood. I thought earlier in your report, you were saying that the city said that they were going forward with the parking study. So I thought that meant that the city would be paying for the parking study.
The city is going forward with the parking study. The city is paying for the parking study with TIF funds. We can either say we support it or say that we don't. It's not necessary. The city has the option to allocate up to $50,000 of TIF money without any community support or without any, they can actually do it without city council support. They'd like to move it through city council because that's the right thing to do.
So we can actually not, I mean, could we vote to allocate that $37,500 to something else because the city's going to already pay for this parking study some way, either through TIF money or some other way, means? I'm not sure why we have to vote on this.
We absolutely can. They're going to use TIF money regardless, either from this previously allocated monies, which then doesn't take away from any other unallocated funds, because this money was already allocated for a project. It's basically just shifting from one priority to another, as opposed to them taking it from unallocated monies. Until we reallocate these specific funds, they're going to be sitting here for an affordable housing project for 6012. So we can vote and say we're going to unallocate for 6012 and then only allocate for one or two of the projects. All of that money then goes into unallocated funds, which then can be used for any developer doing any infrastructure or any city projects doing infrastructure within the Madisonville TIF district, or we can specifically get behind what it is that we want it to be allocated for. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I think it, and I'll just throw in there, and I depends on how we vote and whether a new motion could be made. If the money was allocated for some sort of affordable housing, maybe we vote to reallocate it towards the entire amount towards affordable housing. Just throwing that out here. Thanks.
Okay. Let me go back. Ms. Tony had her hand up next, and then Sarah, you'll be after. Ms. Tony, go ahead.
Okay, I'm probably all confused, but you said that there was money there for 6012 and they were going to put some affordable units in there in the beginning. And then MCURC decided to do something. I lost it there. I didn't get it all. Elishia or somebody was explaining it. And I guess my question is, with all our problems around affordable housing, why did that get smashed too? That's my question.
Miss Tony, and like I said, I do apologize. This was a discussion we had. It was quite a while ago. And I think since then we've had a million other things pop up. So it's kind of left the forefront of our minds. But 6012, when the building was first purchased, it was estimated that it was going to be like a $500,000 to $600,000 rehab. And once we got in, it was determined it was going to be about a $1.2 million rehab. And it turns out that MCURC doesn't have a bottomless pit of money that we swim in like Scrooge McDuck. I wish we did, because we would have so much affordable housing. So with that, and knowing that the end user that had a desire to be in this property and meeting kind of the surveys that we've had over the years with Place Matters, there's always stated need for kind of an affordable, nice, casual eat-in restaurant, which is what we're providing, that's bringing quite a few jobs to the neighborhood for our community members. They were not going to be able to do this project either if they didn't have ownership of the building. Because of both of these kind of unknown circumstances going into the project, this was decided. We did get community feedback, and there was a lot of extensive discussion about this. This was not done lightly. MCURC is still looking at every possible option we have for affordable housing. In fact, today there was a discussion I had with Bill Fisher at the port about 2 different options. I know that several of my board members have worked on projects in the years, or pushing ideas for projects in the past years. So we're not abandoning affordable housing. It wasn't feasible with this project. And the truth is, with the cost now for materials, it would be even less feasible. This would be that we would be losing money. We wouldn't even be able to stay open to operate it. So sometimes affordable housing, the biggest hurdle is the cost associated. There has to be a profit margin. And it's an unfortunate situation. And that's why I think we're getting all this money allocated to the community. And with that, we need to identify the best ways to deliver affordable housing projects and the concept and get the models out there for folks that's meeting the dollar amounts that they can afford, which we know are not at 80%. They're going to have to be a little bit lower. So Ms. Tony, we're not abandoning, MCURC didn't abandon anything. This was the only thing that was feasible. Plus, I think we're still doing a good thing because this is a gnarly looking piece of property. It's blight, and that the rest of the property owners, it's unfair to them to have to sit next to a building that's falling apart. So MCURC wants to do our part and make sure that we bring that building up to its best in use. And then we're supporting the other small business owners around us who've been investing in this community for quite some time.
Okay, I just didn't know about, I don't remember the amount that you stated. I was only trying to clarify it. I just wanted to know why they abandoned that project, and I didn't remember the funds. So that was the only reason I was asking. I wasn't being negative. I just wanted to know why they stepped away from that. I didn't know about the amount of the cost. Thank you.
Thanks, Ms. Tony. We've got a couple of comments about the parking study. So before we go into those, Elishia, because you had provided the, you had actually provided scope of the parking study to Councilman Landsman, Councilman Kearney. I know you and I had both spoken with Councilman Sunderman about the parking study as well. Can you just provide a little bit of background on the scope of the parking study and what that means? Alex, heard your comment about there's plenty of parking for a concert. There was a open house party at one of the storefronts a week ago, and there was no parking on any of the streets. So as much as we want to believe that there's parking, there are ways to earmark that. There are churches, yes, that have parking lots, but just like people can't park in your driveway without permission, people can't park in someone else's parking lot without their permission either. So I think that's some of the things I think Elishia can help address and clarify with the scope of the parking study. Go ahead.
Before I jump into the scope, I do want to clarify on one point. So I sat in on the meeting the other day when this was discussed. Kate, I think, is the whole idea of having this discussion and voting to reallocate TIF funds is more a practice and good faith of making sure the community knows what's going on. Basically, we were told the TIF funds are going to be used for this. They're going to go the good way and go through council, but if it gets turned down, they can still move forward with it. They're making this choice not based on anything that community council has done, that MCURC has done, that MBC has done. This is based off of, I think, over 40 some responses that was at a general community engagement meeting 2 weeks ago regarding a Sierra lot where parking was repeatedly discussed and in depth. So I think that was enough for the city administration to say, okay, we're hearing you. There are enough people saying this. It's time to do this. So I think what Kate has done by bringing this, it doesn't really matter, but she wanted the community to be aware and to be able to have active discussion. So I don't think it's a matter of really allocating because I think they're spending this money anyway. As far as the parking study goes, this came about last year. We were sitting in a meeting with Councilman Landsman, and he had mentioned, you know, what's the community upset about? They already have a parking study, and it was stated, well, there was never a parking study. There was a parking inventory. Some discussion ensued, and he asked me what a parking study typically looks like. So I went over with him the ones I've been involved with and the ones that I've studied. And, you know, when you're in school, you see the examples and samples and do your practice ones, and just kind of went over basic scope. So what was looked at was the idea of having the center focus be at Madison and Whetsel, radiating out by several blocks, identifying all the active spots that are usable, all the active spots that are not usable. There's actually some parking spots that shouldn't be parking spots. All the spots that are metered, what spots, what parking do we have that's handicap accessible? What would need repairs? So, I mean, this isn't just about creating more parking. This is also maximizing the parking you currently have because it's not happening. That I can say. Whether or not there's more parking needed, I won't know until the study happens, but I can say there could be some things done to create better, more efficient parking with what you have. So these parking studies, they look at all those items, they come up with different ways to find solutions. They also make a determination on whether or not there is enough parking. I think I'm interested in this for some different reasons in the community. At this point, I would say that some people are asking for hundreds of spots of parking, and I'm thinking that's probably not what's needed, but there's no way to know until there is a parking study. This seems to be a problem that is popping up everywhere. When MBDP applications went out this year, that's everybody in the minor were asking for money for parking lots and parking. It seems to be what's being discussed in every neighborhood for the most part. And people keep saying it's not, but then I sat in those presentations and they were. It was just one after the other, like parking study, parking meters, parking lot. We tried to go for bike racks. We're like trying to encourage people here in Madisonville to ride the bike. So way to go us. And then turns out they really wanted to fund parking. So that's the parking study. The scope is basically identifying what we have, what is working, what's not working, and then making a determination if any more parking is needed. And they'll have very good data to validate their suggestions. So I hope everybody is also responsive. If it comes back that we don't need more parking, I hope that you accept that, because these are professionals that are very good at their job. And if it says that we need more parking, I hope that everybody is willing to accept that. I still have a number. I think it's a very small amount that we need. I'm going to feel really good, and hopefully somebody gets me a beer or something if I'm right, but I said 70 spots. That's an easy fix too. People get real freaked out by a number like that. We can do that super easy. There's no need to put in a giant surface lot for that. If we need 300 spots, that's a different story. So the parking study is going to be useful. It's going to be useful for the businesses to be able to show property owners that are trying to attract tenants. Do we want to see Madison and Whetsel sit vacant? Because I need businesses in Madison and Whetsel. I think we all do. One of the best things they can do, because right now there's some skepticism for businesses that they won't be able to have people, their patrons won't have a place to park. They can show the parking study and say, hey, look, this is what's up. There's plenty of parking. Or there's not plenty of parking, but here's the plan that we're going to institute to create more parking. So this isn't about people being right or being wrong about parking. This also creates a very good tool for business recruitment. So if we're trying to support our business district, one of the best things we can do, if we're telling people to buy property and redevelop it and put businesses in there, we got to give them some tools to attract the businesses. Materials have went up, so leases or rents are going to go up for leases. One of the things they can do is assure them that they don't have to worry about people finding a place to park, to come in and spend their money.
Thanks, Elishia. Charlie, you've had your hand up for a while. I know your shoulder's tired. Go ahead.
Well, my question is just for clarification purposes. And if we don't allocate some or all of this 100,000, it goes into a pot, as it were, that the city could pull from in order to put on a project in Westwood.
No.
No, that's actually
that's what I want to make sure.
No.
Clarify on. Okay.
As long as this is allocated for 6012, it will stay earmarked for 6012 in perpetuity until we unallocate it, because we have it on official record that we have allocated $100,000 to 6012. I think Kat asked this question as well. Why are we spending so much time in it? Because if we don't allocate it, it will just sit for a project that doesn't exist. We literally have to send the city notification that we would like to unallocate $100,000 and reallocate it either to general funds or to reallocate it for projects that we've actually already voted on and we know that we want to do. Otherwise, it basically kind of sits and is held hostage by a project that is by a portion of a project that's not going to happen.
Right. All I wanted to make sure was that it doesn't go into a city pot that they could use for other projects, because it's other unallocated TIF money for any other place in the city.
It would stay attached.
In other words, I want to make sure that we control it here in Madisonville. That's all I want to clear on.
It's attached to 6012 until it's unattached to 6012, which means it can't be earmarked for any other projects. If you were on the community engagement meeting, there's an opportunity for affordable housing for the North Sierra lot. That for what's being proposed, that extra 37.5 could actually go toward that project, but we can't do that if it's not reallocated for affordable housing. Mike Ty had actually had a couple of comments and questions. I'm going to go ahead and read those. Again, and I saw he'd asked this on Nextdoor as well. When's the last time Madisonville had a comprehensive master plan? When was it last updated? And why would we as a community allow these funds for a purpose of parking study because of the lack of planning by the developer, not building a parking lot, a parking garage, of underground parking garage. Now we're trying to fix the developer's lack of planning. He votes for affordable housing. Then he actually came back and asked why wasn't a green space built into the plan just for the purpose of having community events. Every local community has a square.
Not going.
Hopefully. There was not green space allocated specifically for this project. However, there is a 30-foot plaza that's going to be in front of the
Because
library.
Deja's like, I'll see you around. I'm like, actually, you want.
DJ didn't realize he was unmuted. There is a 30-foot plaza that's going to be in front of the library space for phase 3. While that's not green space, there are some really cool designs that they're implementing into that. I know that initially the last time when design review had met the last time back in January, there was talk about doing some creative placemaking for what was going to be potentially that parking lot on the North Sierra lot. Again, we've not, as the design review committee met since January 28th. So up until this last community engagement meeting, we had not seen any follow-up plans to that effect. Sarah, you had your hand up and then put it down and then put your hand up again. So Sarah, the floor is yours.
Hi, everybody. Thank you, Kate. Yeah, I'm a little frustrated also that we're spending so much time on this if the city is going to do this anyway. My opinion is that TIF funds, there are other ways to fund these projects, the bike racks and the parking study, and I am opposed to using TIF funds for those. I think the $100,000 could be used for affordable housing, could be used for a future streetscape as we move east on Madison Road or west. It could go towards what we had previously allocated for the side path between MedPace Way and Madison and Whetsel. I think those other uses can be paid for, the city has other pots of funds they could use to pay for the parking study, and there are grants out there for the bike rack. So I would just prefer to use TIF funds for other uses. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. I saw another hand up. Oh, wait, where'd she go? There you go, Anne, floor is yours.
Thank you. I was in the community engagement meeting along with a lot of us that are on this phone call. I got the, maybe I'm wrong, but I got the general sense that the parking study was nixed, that was not what the sense of the community was, that we didn't want a parking study. There were some people, that were vocal about it and wanted it, but the vast majority of those speaking at that meeting did not want to pursue a parking study. We have a parking assessment and a parking, Elishia, I don't remember what you called it, but these are the number of parking spaces we have. But the parking study for $37,000, I think, or $52,000, whatever they want to pay for it, is not needed. And like I said, my sense of the meeting was that it was overwhelmingly against a parking study. I, like many others that have spoken, would rather see that money go towards affordable housing.
Okay, Elishia, you had your hand back up. Go ahead.
Sorry. First off, this happens every few months in regards to the Madison and Whetsel project, where somebody says they didn't do this or they didn't do that. So I'm just for some friendly encouragement so we can keep moving forward, because this project is important. And if we don't support this project, our whole community will suffer. There's a certain point where we have this project, it's done. I can't go back in time. I don't think anybody else can. So as far as why they didn't do something, who knows? But what we can do is look at what we can do moving forward. And if we can just stay focused on that, we're going to work to keep bringing you green space, and we're going to find ways to make our community as walkable and bikeable as possible. I think that's the best way to stay focused. If you're unhappy with how the project went before, then stay active in this community as this project or any other project moves forward. But please, let's stay focused on what we can do in the future so things don't pass us by and happen while we're focusing on the past. As far as the bike racks, I think this is my fault, and I'm so sorry. I know that Madison and Whetsel project is funding their bike racks through TIF. So that's why it was actually I'm the one who called Ms. Bodos and asked, would it be possible to do this? Because the community overwhelmingly had supported the desire for bike racks. And because our businesses are saying that they feel like they're missing the bicycle business as the cyclists drive past. Because I know when I stopped by the Bramble Patch the other day on the way to Tuesdays at the park, there were 8 bicycles chained to parking meters, which A, is not legal, B, is not safe, and creates a really nasty looking environment. I know MCURC's in charge of planning programming for this plaza, and I'm pumped about it. And we're already starting to talk about some things that we can do when this plaza is complete. Well, one of the things is we're sitting here talking about potentially having like bicycle rides that end. I know Carrie's probably chomping at the bit for that because he's planning bicycle rides. So as we're doing this, the idea was to support the public infrastructure to help mitigate cars being in spots because we don't like cars and additional parking. We help mitigate the need for parking by encouraging bicycling. We're also encouraging individuals who may not be able to afford a vehicle but can afford a bicycle in our community to know that they're welcome to, get to our business district. We're supporting our businesses. These are all really important things. And I'm so sorry because I figured if we had already as a community decided to support the purchase of bike racks with TIF funds, that we would just throw in the rest of it, which I think is going to be a kind of a small amount of change compared to the initial public art component with the bike racks that's already being allocated. So that is my fault.
I had a comment from Sarah. Aren't we already getting bike racks? The artistic bike racks can be funded by grants. That is true. But I literally chained my bike illegally to a parking meter because I was trying to promote walkability and bikeability in our neighborhood. I have a really hard time selling this to the city of Cincinnati when we don't want to support the very thing that we keep screaming about, saying that we don't need a parking study. We're walkable, we're bikeable, but we don't have any of the infrastructure in place. This is what I absolutely agree with Mr. Ty in the fact that we have to be proactive in supplying the things that people need to get to the places, bless you, to get to the places that they want and need to go. It's great to earmark funds for an additional lane from MedPace to Madison and Whetsel, but if nobody has any place to put their bikes when they get there, I'm going to keep riding to Mariemont where they have them, which is not what we want to do. Mr. Capister, you had your hand up. Go ahead. Mr. Capister. Did we lose you?
I did not have my hand up. I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. I will lower your hand. Sarah, go ahead. You had another comment or question?
Yeah, and I apologize because I admit to be multitasking, so I apologize if I missed this, but I'm confused. If we've already allocated funds for bike racks as part of our overall streetscape, aren't we already getting them? I didn't hear the answer to that question.
Sorry, I had to step away because I kept sneezing. I apologize.
You want to say that one for the bike racks, Elishia, since that's your project?
Well, we didn't allocate, the community didn't, the Madison and Whetsel project requested at some point from the city TIF funding to pay for a couple bike racks. It's not sufficient by, like, if you look at the basic standard for bike racks for a project of that size and scope, I think they were trying to be frugal. But they donate some really cool bike racks, which will be in your newsletter that should be hitting your mailboxes hopefully next week. You'll get to see kind of a sneak peek at what all the public art installations are going to look like. But some of those are bike racks and benches, and the bicycle racks and the benches are being paid for with TIF funds. But there was no allocation. I think they just made a request to the city and received the funding.
Right. So I guess I would like to know how many are we getting? Where are they going to be located in order to best make this decision? I mean, it's really kind of silly because apparently the city is going to make this decision for us. So maybe we should just stop talking about it since we don't really have any control over this.
Not the bike racks. We do have control over the bike racks. We do have control over the affordable housing.
I thought you said that anything under $50,000, the city can decide to spend the
In
TIF
terms,
money
in
on.
terms of the parking study, they said they were going to push that through regardless. That does not apply to the bike racks or to the affordable housing piece.
I see.
Yeah.
So I guess I would like to know how many are we getting and where are they going to be to better understand if we need more and what that cost would be and everything. So
Ackerman
that's the last thing I'm going to say about it.
Ackerman Enterprises has purchased or is fabricating 6 bicycle racks. They're the smallest racks you can get. Very cool looking. That is what they are purchasing with some TIF funds. We had worked for an application for MBDIP, which was awkwardly very well supported by people who voted, but I guess there was some weirdness with the MBDIP voting this year, as was discussed by city staff yesterday with some folks. But we worked with transportation, the Department of Transportation, Engineering, DOTE. Carrie sat in on the meeting, Kate Bodos, myself. I had done kind of an assessment from where, like, doing other bicycle friendly business districts. And we found key locations where we could either corral several U-racks, install others. And this was to support the overall aesthetic and draw of the business district with the public arts plan that MCURC has been sponsoring and working on. And then also to allow the little tiny basic, like there's like these little basic black U-racks that are really small that the city received from DeVue Good Foundation. Those could be placed elsewhere in the community because we don't want people to only bike in our business district. We'd like them to go to our other business corridors, our parks. We wanted some racks, I think, at the Desmond Park, at Bramble Park. Carrie did a really good job helping map out all of that. That wasn't kind of, I'm used to the bicycle friendly business districts. Carrie kind of like knew a little bit more about where to place them for the rest of the community, but we did work with DOTE and kind of, I think it was an 1.5 to 2 hour conversation and mapped out everything. So that was done with city staffing as far as kind of how this would happen. And those racks are free, but there's only so many, there's not enough to cover everything. So we would still have a lack.
I'm sorry, Anne, you had a question?
Yes, so as I understand it for the bike racks, we've only written one grant proposal and it was not accepted. It wasn't funded. And so instead of pursuing other grant funding, we're just going straight to TIF. Is that correct?
Oh, no, we're, to my understanding, and I'll answer this for Elishia, I know that the community council is looking at other, is looking at other grant funding because we have other areas of the neighborhood that are not covered by TIF to work on grant funding for that. It's my understanding also that there have been a request for scores from the MBDIP because there were some questions about how the scoring was done. So it's possible that that still may get funded. We're still, jury's still out on that one. We're waiting to hear. But again, it comes back to grants aren't always a sure thing. We could not get a grant for bike racks for 10 years. So that means 10 years of no bike racks in the community that you're telling people is walkable and bikeable and come to patronize businesses and stores and things of that nature, but you don't have any place to put your bicycle.
But there will be bicycle racks at Madison and Whetsel. And so the TIF dollars are being requested for outside of those bike racks. So there will be some. I just feel it's better to go after grant funding than using TIF funding, which in my humble opinion should go to affordable housing.
Okay. Keep in mind that the TIF district is more than Bramble and Whetsel. I know that that's what everybody is focused on, but we have an entire TIF district and business district that we need to continue to support, and we haven't been supporting. Looks like there was, no, looks like that was the only hand. Amanda, were there any other questions online or in the chat?
We have a comment out in the Q&A, but that is the only thing I see.
What's your name?
I think most are for bike racks. Again, we need the room to maybe try and get a state grant, but I'm for the bike racks. Thank you, Mr. Ty, for your comments. All right. This was literally a topic of conversation. We literally, oh, Miss Kathy has a comment. We literally don't have to vote on anything. We can literally let this money sit in the 60-12 bucket and marinate on it. We're in no rush. Kathy, go ahead. You had a question or comment?
I just have a comment. I know we keep talking about the affordable housing. You know, and I'm not going to kind of replay some records here, but you know, we were supposed to get affordable housing initially in the development. You know, there's other supposed affordable housing in the community. I think we all keep forgetting it's affordable for whom, and what are the numbers that are being used to create affordable, because we're not using city numbers, we're using county numbers. That's my understanding, which are much higher than community or city numbers. So you keep talking about affordable housing, affordable for whom? And so I think we need to think about that in terms of the affordable housing. Do we need workforce housing? Absolutely we do. Do we need more subsidized? Yes, we do. Do we need what some are calling affordable? You know, until they can define that number, I would have issue with that. And I would again still stick by the parking study. I think it's, you know, something that we probably should be doing. People keep, you know, we keep talking about there's plenty of parking in the neighborhood, but if you look around at our streets on any given day, you will see there is no parking space. And until all of those businesses are opened up and restaurants are opened and things are really at full blast, you know, I can't say that we don't need a parking study. So that's just my 2 cents.
Thank you, Kathy. In the interest of time, I actually have a suggestion or recommendation, and I'll let it sit out with the general body, and we can potentially vote on it by just showing hands. I know Charlie's going to yell at me and say there's an open motion on the floor as he shakes his head at me. Nothing needs to be decided this evening. I'm still waiting on the remaining TIF dollars that are that are unallocated in our TIF from Director Carter. My suggestion or proposal would be to get that number from Director Carter and then do a final potential allocation on what the community would like the remaining TIF dollars, both the unallocated as well as this remaining money from 60-12 to go toward, to actually do a more robust decision to the city of Cincinnati. Charlie's raising his hand because he's going to tell me that I can't do that. Go ahead, Charlie. Unmute yourself.
I know that. I knew better than that. Then my suggestion is we just table this discussion until next month, or until such time that a precise accounting of how much money is in the TIF account can be constructed for that we can share with the members.
Okay. And I'm going to put your hand down for just a second. Is there any objection to tabling this conversation until we have definitive TIF numbers of what remains unallocated? To do a reverse, if you have an objection, throw your hand up. I'm going to take that as no objection. We'll table it until next month.
Okay.
All right. All right, Charlie, the floor is yours. I'm going to turn it over to you for the amendment proposals for MCC bylaws.
Yep. Give me just a second here to share my screen. Hopefully it will work correctly from the very beginning. Can I get an amen from the choir? There you go. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, we have spent a
Charlie, you froze, or I froze.
Charlie.
Charlie. Charlie, you're breaking up.
Okay,
There we go.
that's, yep.
Are you there?
One under Article 1. We're going to look at the territorial boundaries. And do we anticipate the city changing boundaries? No. But if the city would change those boundaries, then we don't have to sit around and modify our bylaws, because census tract numbers are frankly not specific enough in some cases. Then we also then, as a part of our discussion that we heard last month, we added section 2.1. Because the city of Cincinnati sets the boundaries, all members of MCC are subject to all city ordinances and state laws regarding the operation of Madisonville Community Council, including but not limited to Ohio record retention laws and Ohio's laws commonly known as sunshine laws. Failure to scrupulously follow these laws may result in all penalties, including fines and jail. The section 2.1 came about because it's got to be clear. And to be bluntly honest with you, here it is. I'm now finishing up my 4th year as a board member. And it's only really been in the last 9 months since that I really understood about how much material I'm supposed to be saving, because we're considered a part of the city of Cincinnati. And it's the first time we knew we ran into some trouble was when we had a file cabinet that was moving from what is now development area and ended up on the street and ended up being thrown out, and it should never have been thrown out because it's papers and documents that the city uses for our purposes. So by putting this in, we take this as a discussion, and whoever the new officers are after the elections in November, we'll probably sit down and have some more discussions and make sure that they are completely clear. So Article 3 says who will be the membership. We're going to say, we're taking out the section of who can cast the vote, and just says that anyone who is at least 18 years of age can become a member of MCC, as long as you do it 21 days before you can start and start to make motions, debate motions, and vote. Anyone who is not a member of Madisonville may become a member of MCC 21 days after current payment of dues, but shall have no voting privileges. You know, I can't see why somebody who lives in Marymount wanted to become a member of MCC, but they could. They just can't hold elected office, but they could be a standing committee chair. In changes to section 3, A business whose primary offices are located within Madisonville can become a member of MCC 21 days in advance. We've taken out the amount of the dues because anytime you choose to have a dues amount other than what's here in the bylaws, you either have to waive the bylaws or you got to change the bylaws. And it would be easier if, as we get closer to November, that we put together a budget, and I use that term in quotation marks, for next year so that we can set the how much membership dues and or business dues would be. Also, an entirely new section 3.2. Any member who is defined under this, who is also a designated representative, meaning representing a business, and a representative of a business does not have to live in Madisonville. And we've actually said that they could, or if they live in Madisonville, they could still cast 2 ballots, one for themselves and one for the business. We have made no changes to the honorary member of Madisonville. Most of 5.1, most of the changes were the fact that we changed it from council to MCC. We had Article 7 is now Article 6. It says that the calendar year a calendar year, January 1st, December 31st is a year in our purposes. Dues are due on January 1st. We clarified it by saying that if you paid it in November and December, you are paying it for the following year's dues. And finally, the last one under 8, anyone who has not paid their dues by January 31st is considered delinquent, and you cannot hold elective or appointive office. Sections 1, 2, and 3 of Article 4 have no changes. Section 3.1 would to maintain organizational independence and integrity and to be eligible to run for an elected MCC office. It says a member cannot be an officer in MBC or in MCURC. And they have to have decided by January 1st, January 15th of the election year, whether or not they wanted to stay in both. The officers, and you understand the office, there's only 4 officers: president, vice president, secretary, and treasurer. The officers are considered fiduciary. Their positions are critical in maintaining the confidentiality. Therefore, all officers shall sign an appropriate statement indicating their assent or their agreement to maintaining confidentiality at least once a year. The idea being is that sometimes these development ideas that come before the officers may be a month or 2 before it even gets to the board and a month or 2 before it comes to the membership. That's because the developers are looking for feedback. We'll give them feedback, but that also may mean that future changes are going to come about. That's why we can't officers would have to keep what they say in confidence. We also then in section 3 a new section 3.3, as fiduciaries, the officers shall avoid the appearance of impropriety in matters before that. that includes whether or not we have a minority or a majority financial stake in the project. Therefore, the members will sign an appropriate statement indicating to avoid conflicts of interest. Don't worry, we see all the questions. We're going to take the questions one by one as we get through the entire list. All business of the community council will be conducted in a manner consistent in compliance with the city's record retention and charitable and sunshine laws. Again, this is very similar to what was under 2.1. Under 4.1 allows for what happens if somebody is either appointed or elected to the board, but then must leave. So if you're going to resign from the board, you have to do it in writing. You have to give it to the secretary. If the secretary is the one who's doing it, then it's delivered to another officer. 4.2 says that any board member may be removed by a 2/3 vote of the remaining directors. And when they are, and at the same time, let's look at 4.3. Any member, MCC member, may file a motion to remove any or all the board members, meaning elected or committee chairs. You have a 2/3 vote in order to be able to do just that. And in the event under 4.4 that the membership votes the leadership, votes either the elected or appointed leadership out, then they also have to have a special election for 3 people who will then go about the business of otherwise setting up and allowing the board, the membership, to elect a replacement board, and they have 90 days in order to complete that task. No changes in section 5 or under Article 6 on nominations. Article 6 under Board of Directors, section 1, it just says we've had for a number of years the immediate past president will be a board member, but it never said for when, except it was said for 1 year. Well, which year? So now we've made it clear it will be only for the first year after the after their presidential term is up. A new section 6 under Article 6 says the Board of Directors cannot take a formal position representing the council without an affirmative vote of the entire membership. And I think that's a smart decision. We'll go on. 7 talks about the committees. 8 is about meetings, no changes there. 9, 10, and 11, nothing changes in any of those. There is a minor change here, and that is that the bylaws are incomplete unless accompanied, because it followed doesn't necessarily mean that's where you would keep them. They must be accompanied with the standing rules. Under the standing rules, the first change is to make sure that all MCC meetings are in compliance with the city and Ohio mandated sunshine laws. And it's also under the president to serve as the sole speaker on behalf of the council unless designated otherwise by the president or the board. And that particular one is very important for us. The change under treasurer number 2, you see the little $sign. That's actually a typo. It never ended up as a $sign in our standing rule. So we're just clarifying that. And again, the secretary is responsible to ensure compliance with all city and Ohio mandated record retention laws. And the secretary also then is responsible for record any recusals because of financial interests in the minutes of the meeting. I'm just going to pick on her for a second. You know, if Kathy Garrison comes forward with something from Artsville and she needs it, and we're going to support it, Kathy shouldn't be voting on it. But she should then make sure that the secretary shows in the minutes that Kathy has recused herself from voting in the on the motion. Otherwise, that's just the change there under bylaws and standing rules. These are all procedural issues, nothing significant changing in any of those. And the same things under communications, we just by adding all elected and appointed officers, I wanted to make sure that if somebody ever comes, whether it's a Facebook page or a website, that anybody can find any of the officers, who they are, and find a way to be in touch with any of them. And finally, a new 7, because before it wasn't really clear about how do you do amendments for the standing rules. So we said typical Robert's rule says that standing rules, which deal with administrative issues, do not require notice, and they usually can be overridden or new ones presented at any time with just a majority of vote, whereas your bylaws typically take 2/3. And with that, Madam President, I move the adoption of the bylaws and standing rules as presented at this time.
Sorry, hold on one second, Charlie. I'm trying to multitask and it's not working well. Is there a second so we can open it up for discussion? Because there's a lot of discussion. I've got a couple of points of clarity.
Oh, I don't worry. I know there's going to be questions. Questions are okay.
Oh, whoops. I'm sorry. Miss Florence, you're not a panelist. Elizabeth is a panelist. Apologies.
Oh.
I'm going to change you back. And nobody's saying it's going to be voted on tonight. We can't discuss anything or take any comments or take any notes until we open it up for discussion.
And we have a motion on the floor. And I couldn't tell if you had gotten a second to the motion. Okay.
I've got 2 hands up. I don't know if those are questions or I'm going to lower hands or if those are seconds.
Or more questions.
I'm going to assume Kat is seconding. We'll go ahead and open up for discussion. But before we do that, we're going to answer. Okay, if you're not seconding, please do not raise your hand. We're trying to get a second so that we can open up for discussion to answer questions. Otherwise, nothing will get done today. Mr. Capister, are you seconding?
Yes.
Thank you.
Jeez.
All right. Elizabeth, I'm actually going to address numbers 1 and number 2 as well. We've got Elizabeth Bartley here. I just realized it's really dark in here. Charlie, can you scroll up to number 1 and number 2, please?
I will. Give me just a moment here. I'm trying to get a hint of the upcoming questions that are coming. So, hold on.
Bartley here from Invest in Neighborhoods.
Yeah.
You like these things, huh?
It's been asked that the motion be repeated. Is that possible?
Yeah, just a second. Let's get to where we are.
Okay, I'm back up to Article 1.
The motion on the floor is to, I lost my train of thought that fast.
Is to approve these bylaws and standing rules as presented.
Correct. Number 2, actually, Charlie, the boundaries are actually assigned to Madisonville by Madisonville. This is actually currently kind of a hot topic in the city of Cincinnati. They're not assigned by the city council.
Okay.
So we are going to need to address that.
No problem. I can take that out without just a few backspaces on my computer.
Okay, Elizabeth, you had comments about section 2, I think 2.1. The floor is yours, Elizabeth. I think you're back.
Unmute. Thanks, Kate. So you didn't hear, I'm Elizabeth Bartley with Invest in Neighborhoods, and I spend an inordinate amount of time helping community councils with their bylaws. And I have had some conversation with Kate. I just hadn't seen things and looked at it with a fine tooth comb. So yes, Kate already said, no, the city does not assign the boundaries. They don't, and they won't. They might, specify boundaries for when they have to notify a certain thing, but as an independent nonprofit organization, they cannot tell you where your boundaries are, which is partly where the whole huge discussion we're having right now with the city about making sure that the bylaws as defined, or the boundaries as defined in community council bylaws, are being worked with correctly at the city. And without starting a 2-hour conversation, that's all I need to say about that. I'd like to address the sunshine laws, because I hear this frequently. Community councils are not subject to sunshine laws. Our community councils existed prior to the city recognizing them for doing a couple of functions. So we are not governmental, we are not quasi-governmental, and we are not fulfilling the function of a governmental entity as however that was defined when you look at the sunshine laws of the state of Ohio. So that just needs to be very clear, because we are not subject to sunshine laws. So therefore you don't reference, we are doing something because of sunshine laws. So there's no things about Freedom of Information Act, records requests, things like that. Now, to say you want to operate openly is a whole different thing, but you're not going along with, but sunshine laws just flat out do not apply. So I just wanted to make sure that that was clear. There are a lot of things about record retention, yes. So complying with nonprofit law, state of Ohio law, and the required record retention by the city of Cincinnati, which really, the records of the city of Cincinnati require you to retain are ones you should have been retaining anyway under just general best practices, nonprofit law, and things like that. So you just need to kind of clean that up and make sure that you're not, one, making incorrect references, and two, you're fulfilling your intention here.
Okay.
Okay. Charlie, did you get my note about highlighting in red for items to be removed?
Well, I'm doing it on the screen as we speak.
Okay.
Yep.
If I've got it open, if you need me to drop the language in so you don't have to retype it. Don't take it out, highlight it in red.
Oh, you're no fun.
I know.
So Kate, while he's doing that, do you want me to address a couple of the other things I spotted, the bigger things, not teeny tiny things, but which I would also be very happy to work with the committee and go over the draft for teeny tiny little things. Okay, this has to do with complying with the ordinance 220/1989, which is the only thing that exists at the city of Cincinnati that even remotely defines community councils.
Correct.
And it's very, very specifically to what we recognize, these requirements that you have to have for us to recognize you as a community council so you can get an SP money. Basically, you have to be like this to be a vendor of the city of Cincinnati. You have a change in there. I lost track of what it was, but it had been one of the drafts might have been, I don't know, I was looking confused, but it was the one where you changed the residents voting on removing businesses and stuff. It had been like 6 and it was 5-1, but then I think it got moved again. I got a little confused. Do you know which one I'm talking about?
I think I have an idea, but go ahead. Tell me what you're thinking,
Okay.
Elizabeth.
So you have to revert that all back to say residents, because that is a very specific thing that you have to have in your bylaws that's required by the city of Cincinnati in order for you to get the NSP money. And they mean residents, and they also mean only residents but can do that vote.
Okay.
Okay.
That's and you said that again was ordinance 220-1989.
Yep, I have a copy if you need it.
I don't know. I don't
27
need
copies.
I just wanted to make sure
Yes.
that I got that, because I can reference that as a parenthesis at the end of it, so that if anybody has some questions about it, they
That's a
can
good
look
point.
that up.
And I'm sure that Kate has the copy too.
Oh, yeah.
We all do. But related to that, you need to have a non-discriminatory clause about your members. So specifically, very specifically, because this is in the 1989 ordinance, you have to be non-discriminating because of the type of housing.
Okay.
And that was actually, that tiny little thing was one of the major reasons that this whole ordinance was written, and it was revised from a previous ordinance, because there had been councils that were saying you had to be a property owner to be a member. So they got rid of that. So you have to have that in there. Most community councils I see now just do a general, 18 and over, but we don't discriminate age, race, gender orientation, form of housing, yada, yada, yada. So you definitely have to have the housing one in there, but you could just do the bigger one.
Okay.
So those were the 2 things I spotted that need to be done for the to be in compliance with the 1989.
Okay. Kate, do you have that exact language?
I do. I'll drop it for
Okay,
the.
that's no problem. We will, and once again, those changes are not, since they are required in other places, that's not a problem. And I wouldn't anticipate that being a problem with eventual approval by everybody. Okay. Got anything else, Elizabeth? You're shy.
No, I'm so shy about all this stuff. Again, that was the major things. But I'd be happy to go over this when you guys get to that final draft and just make sure I'm not spotting anything else. But I will be participating in the rest of this conversation in case there's questions that I could possibly answer or, give some more information around.
Okay.
But those were the main things, I think. Was that? Because I'd written a couple in the questions. I think that was it. Did I cover everything I said I was going to cover, Kate?
Oh, don't worry. I'll circle back.
Yeah. And just so the membership that's with us still, I figured that Elizabeth was one of those experts that eventually we were going to have to at least float these by her, if not actually, run them by her, walk them by her. So this is not, so the fact that she's found these other ones are not a problem to me. They're what we, it's the sort of thing that unless somebody is a lawyer or an expert in that area, we wouldn't necessarily have known that. But thank you, Elizabeth. I appreciate it very much.
Thank you.
Okay.
Carly, I'm going to run down some of the questions. Some have been asked and answered. Some of them are repeats that we'll go ahead and get answered. For Jonathan Sinclair, no, we did not get a legal opinion for 2.1. I did speak with the Attorney General's office in regards to general concepts. I did speak with the City of Cincinnati City Solicitor's office in regards to general concepts. We work with pro bono partners, so when we do have a final draft, we will present to them. as well as invested neighborhoods for any points of clarification. Naima, I'll have to come back and answer your how many voting numbers are present tonight. I'll have to go through and look and count. It's looking like 29, but I'd have to clarify. Who advised, Naima also has a question, who advised MCC that it was subject to records retention and sunshine laws under penalty of fines and jail? Failure to, if you're required to adhere to sunshine laws and you don't, that's under penalty of fines and jail. We are subject to records retention just because we are a nonprofit 501c3. I'm of the mindset you keep at least 7 years of records on hand at all time, tax rules. 12 if it's international law. I printed what's posted on the website as 3, and this was not there. This is an overwhelming amount of information to review. A vote should not be taken tonight. We simply open it up for discussion. It's up to the general body if someone requests that a vote be taken. We are simply opening up for discussion. Mr. Sinclair already asked and answered on without seeking legal advice by the city or an attorney. With all these changes, perhaps this needs to go back to the committee with more input from membership. That's why we're having the discussion now. My understanding of Naima, my understanding of Article X is that the proposed amendments would have had to have been submitted in writing after the previous regular meeting in order for us to vote tonight, and that did not happen. I don't understand why Charlie made a motion to approve these amendments. This all seemed very rushed. Per Robert's rules, you open up with a motion to approve, and that opens up for discussion. That's standard Robert's rules. With that, I'm just going to go down the show of hands. While Mr. Capisser is speaking, Naima, I'll get your answers on how many members are here. Mr. Capisser, the floor is yours. You'll need to unmute yourself.
Again, I didn't have a question, but I agree with the point. You can't have the discussion unless you take and second Charlie's first proposal, and that's according to Robert's rules. And that's why we were stifled in the beginning, because we had to have that approval to bring the amendments discussion forward. So that's all.
Thank you, Mr. Capisser. Naima, to answer your question, how many voting members are present tonight? 29. Mr. Sinclair, the floor is yours.
Hi there. Good evening. I just had, so I understand the question about getting a legal decision about the statement about open records and the sunshine law. And you stated that you did speak to attorneys with the city and they must have given you an affirmative to add this legal statement in our draft right here.
I spoke to the city about concepts in regards to appropriateness for conflict of interest, confidentiality, and what our requirements were for records retention for community council, which we were referred back to Ohio charitable law, Ohio ethics law, and to the city ordinance that Elizabeth Bartley had previously spoken of, which is how we receive our NSP money.
So I'm just saying that 2.1 opens up both the city, the liability for you to make a legal conclusion like you're stating in there. You're stating the law, which was not only incorrect, but you're opening yourself up for liability by making a legal conclusion, and also the city, who would probably have to defend you. But I just have a number of things to talk about. The drafts about conflict of interest don't talk about chairpersons. And so I know that you have about 5 officers, but you also have chairpersons who chair like the 13 committees, or I don't know how many committees, and they're not made clearly part of your proposal. I'm not sure why I'm pointing this out, because I'm not in favor of the proposal at all. I guess the one I really want to have attention to is that it's clear before we make any change to this document that the president of community council cannot advocate at any entity like city council on a position without being approved by their electorate or the board. So right now there's a change that doesn't even state that. It says right now that the president shall be the only speaker on behalf of community council. It doesn't even state that that president could have a position that's personal and state that position, the city council, without any support by the electorate, by any support of your board.
That is correct, which is why the section 6 was being proposed change for section 6. Board of directors, which includes all officers, cannot take a formal position representing MCC without an affirmative vote of membership. That's currently not anywhere in the document, which means I could literally go to city council and say, I think everyone in Madisonville should have a chicken, and fervently pitch this repeatedly without any vote of support from the general body.
And so that can be stated that that is the position of community council as president.
Currently, there's no provision in the bylaws that says that there needs to be a vote taken for any officer or any board of directors to have a vote first before they talk about anything with the city.
Okay, and of course, with the changes again that are right here in yellow, that will continue to be the same.
No, the change in yellow, if you look at section 6, is actually saying they cannot take a formal position without first coming to a vote. Currently, anybody could say, any officer could go to the city and say anything on behalf of community council. With that change, it's saying, no, you can't go to the city and talk about anything without having the affirmative vote from the membership body.
Okay, well,
That's actually a
there's
protection
many different drafts. So I've been looking at the drafts that were printed out, the drafts that were in the yellow highlight before we started the meeting, and then the draft that we have right now in yellow changes as we're having this meeting. It's being typed and changed. So
no,
but
Charlie
the
actually
draft that I
out, and I asked him to change it to red if we're actually going to be striking it from, so there's no confusion, to actually put anything that we're potentially looking at striking to highlight in red as opposed to deleting it. That way that there's a record of it. I'd actually drop that in the chat for everyone to see.
Yeah. Okay. Now there's more leadership organizations in Madisonville besides the two that we're talking about in this change, which is the Business Chamber, I believe, and then MCURC. So as long as you set up a new organization next month, you'll be exempt from all these changes, correct?
Could be.
Actually, no. Charlie, you want to reread that section?
Well, I know that the draft.
No, I know what he's saying.
Yes.
So it was clear before we started the meeting that you picked out two organizations. So I guess if you're saying that now that's been changed, was it changed in the last hour? I mean,
no, I believe that was what was, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe that was what has always been in section 3.1, was to maintain the organizational independence and integrity, and to be eligible to run for any elected MCC office. A member cannot be an officer in any other Madisonville related organization, including but not limited to Madisonville Business Chamber and the Madisonville Community Urban Redevelopment Corporation as of January 15th of the election year. Okay. Which means if it's a Madisonville related organization, those two specifically were highlighted because those are recognized as these specific leadership organizations in Madisonville.
Okay. So if you're a member,
so you could be talking Artsville, you could be talking Meek, you could be talking, or you could be talking any Madisonville related organization, including but not limited to.
Right. So if you're on a garden club, you should be prohibited. So I'm wondering how many people that are talented that are on, 20 different community groups in Madisonville will not be able to run because they're the leadership of a garden committee or a poet club.
Well, and that's honestly, that's a very good question. Joan, I'm putting Joan on the spot. Joan actually asked this in our board meeting the other night. We have 8,500 residents in Madisonville. We're not doing a good job of recruiting people if we're limited to the same 20 people running every organization. That's a failure on all of our parts. We've got an influx of residents coming into the neighborhood that have not previously lived here. We've got an influx of people moving into our various apartment communities and new homes and multifamilies. We should be doing, and I take personal responsibility for that as well, we should be doing a much better job of recruiting and getting people involved. And the best way to do that is to protect the integrity of the organization to which we serve.
Yes, yes. So how do you do that? By saying that leaders of organizations in Madisonville can't run for community council? I just don't understand it.
To be honest with you, I'm not how better to explain it than the way that I just did.
Okay.
Chris Hamlin had a question. I'm not sure if it's a question or a comment. Is there something in there saying that the board can't take a position on an issue without affirmative action of membership? Can the president take a public position? I think we just answered this one. I think that the president of the MCC should distinguish between a personal position and speaking on behalf of a voting of membership.
And has that been done?
Chris, I absolutely agree. Yes. I actually just did it at the public engagement meeting where I actually said I'm taking my hat off as president and I'm speaking from a personal position. I've done that before in previous meetings. I've done that before when representing residents or we're talking about certain things. That was actually put in place. And I'll give you guys some backstory. In the past 3 months, we had a resident go down to city planning, represent themselves as speaking on behalf of community council to try to sway a zone change. We had a resident from another neighborhood speaking on behalf of their friend go to District 2 leadership and actually represent themselves as an officer of the community council, representing themselves to the District 2 captain. Having those parameters in place, yes, isn't necessarily going to stop people from making poor decisions like that. But when you're impersonating an officer of an organization without, how can I say this? You're opening up the organization to liability issues. You're opening up the city to liability issues if decisions are being made on behalf of a voice that is not the recognized voice. It puts those organizations in a very precarious position. It also prevents the president or any officer, or any board of director from speaking out of turn without a vote. We've seen it happen in the past. And we just, again, our job is to protect and ensure the integrity of this organization. The best way we can do that is to put the rules in place so that there's no question. Alex, go ahead. You had a comment. I'm gonna turn on my lights.
What? Well, I don't know what else is. I don't think she cares to hear.
Thank you. Yes, I do. And I'm looking at, I'm not sure, Charlie has shown something I've not seen before, but I'm looking at the proposed changes to Madisonville Community Council bylaws, and it's just a sort of bullet points. So all I can refer to is I got the proposed standing rule changes, sure. Article 5, Section 6 Section 6A.6. Is that something that somebody like Charlie can refer to? Because what he's showing me on the screen, I've never seen before.
Okay. Alex, you're talking about a sheet that was presented last month.
Yeah. And
all it was just to, for lack of a better word, to outline what we were looking at.
Okay. Okay.
In specific, what does it say? And then I'll find this.
So I'll just refer to that. I'm just sort of looking at this Article 5, Section A.6, and it just reads as president's duties include sole voice of the council and can appoint and separate appointee on a case-by-case designation, full stop.
Yeah. Well, that's the, okay, under the standing rules, proposed changes, what would be Article 5, duties of elected officers. Number 7 under the president says 5A is the president shall, and number 7 is serve as the sole speaker on behalf of the council unless designated otherwise by the president or the MCC board.
Okay, so as I'm reading this Article 5 sort of bullet point section A.6, I guess my question or my sort of, I don't think the president of our council should have the sole voice of the council to appoint or not appoint what are ostensibly volunteer positions. I think that should be held to a larger voice or a larger group of the board, because what will turn out is that we'll get into a sort of a conflict or a cult of personality of who likes who doesn't like who. And when we're in a community council, there's many voices, many personalities, and we may not break bread, we may not hang out, but we are looking at the community as a whole for the best. And I just don't think that the president should have that type of power. It should be spread out among the board. Because we'll just have problems with people who don't like each other, and that isn't going to work.
Okay. Well, all I can say is that for most organizations that I've been involved with, that is one of those duties that the president is the only affirmed speaker on behalf of the organization, but that usually the president has the ability to appoint others. But, that's not, as I said, I think the important thing is we want to try and make sure, as in the two examples that Kate just gave, where, and I know that that's not really, those are the real oddball ones. I don't usually anticipate Alex going to speak to city council and saying he's speaking on behalf of Madisonville Community Council. I'm not saying that at all. I think that the examples that Kate gave are the true outliers, and that as a general rule, I think most of our community members, if they went to speak, and if they were there to say, I am a resident of Madisonville, is a whole lot different than saying, I represent Madisonville Community Council.
Okay, yeah, no, I hear that. I
Yeah,
guess
and that's, but Alex, I don't claim to be an English major. But that's, but I understand what you're saying about that. Sometimes that can be the cult of personality that we have to run into.
Correct.
Next thing you're trying to tell me is that there's no politics in community council work.
Oh, well, all politics is local, you know that. So that's kind of just my question about that. Yeah, is that if we could spread, that sort of decision out among a board, I think it would be more healthy for the community. So that's where I stand with that. And then the other question I have is not even on this. It's, I don't even know where I can look for, because I'll just have this 2-sheet paper.
Sure.
But one thing I'm sort of concerned about is the business district or the business chamber seems to have just a standing, there is no vote for the president or for the leader of the business chamber. Can't that change? And I think it should change for the health of our community, because it seems to be we just had one person as the business chamber lead for the past years I've been involved in this council. And that doesn't really seem to be a healthy choice either, because we need different voices and different perspectives on our community. So that's, right. I don't know where that
well,
leads.
I would defer to Kathy Garrison on that. Kathy and I have been working on bylaw revisions for the business chamber. And unfortunately, they're meeting this month. I couldn't be in 2 other places at the same time.
Okay.
So Kathy might have some more information on what was discussed. And if not, outside of this, that's on my list to find out some more. And then Alex, you and I can certainly have a conversation.
That'd be good. Because I think the reason why I bring that up is that our business community is growing. It is
Yep.
growing in leaps and bounds. I mean, we have more members supporting the beautification committee, from the Bramble Business District, from Bees Barbecue. So I think we just need to make sure that that entity within our community is kept whole and kept growing and isn't sort of codified in some way, that it needs to open up. So that's where I stand on that. Other than that, we go forward, Thank you.
Thank you, Alex.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Alex. Kat, you had your hand up next. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to just kind of, I guess, give my 2 cents in this. I think that I do believe that having a conflict of interest statement that is signed by all the members of the board is a great idea. I think that, reviewing your duty of loyalty to the organization is great. I think that when you limit the people who can serve in this volunteer position in this community to not be people who are involved in the community because they've served on other boards, I think that that is a detriment to the community. I think that I'm personally really disappointed in how a lot of these things have gone over the last couple of years. I think, and don't need to get into any of it, but there's a lot of really talented people who really care and want to serve and have not been able to because of a lot of these, I guess, politics, right? So that is just what I would like to say. I think that the way that this was even brought about to the community and all the changes that were made before we got to today and even after 3:00 p.m., this is the fact that we're actually talking about this and it was just poorly thought out and poorly researched it's really disappointing. And I think that, new leadership is coming in, and I think making all these changes before new leadership comes in is not helpful. And I would just like to see us move forward and work together to make Madisonville the community that I think we all, know that it can be.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Naima, go ahead.
Thank you. I agree with what Kat with her sentiments. And I am also particularly concerned with the provision that restricts the eligibility of people who can run for community council. I think I expressed this at the last meeting, and I'll repeat it. And I'll speak from my perspective of serving on the MCURC board, and I'm the president of MCURC. I am a resident of Madisonville, as are, I believe, all of the board members at MCURC, and we're all volunteers. And so this sort of provision seems to restrict volunteerism, and I've yet to hear how limiting or restricting eligibility to even run. I understand where there might be positions that you wouldn't want to be held by the same person with different organizations. If not for, conflicting interests, just being stretched too far or wanting to encourage, broader participation. I understand that part, but the eligibility aspect to even run, the language, Charlie used this non-compete. That assumes that we're in competition with each other. When we all have our respective missions and purposes, and we're not supposedly in competition with each other. There may be, the community council, as John pointed out, I think represents the electorate of Madisonville, everyone, including those of us who volunteer to serve on these other boards as volunteers. And this seems to be a penalty for that, without any explanation for how it supposedly protects the integrity of the community council. I still haven't understood how it protects the integrity. There's an assumption there that there's some lack of integrity from that people who come from other boards would bring to community council. Non-compete agreements are usually for for-profit organizations to protect themselves when people depart from the organization, not when they come into the organization. But having said that, we're not all in competition. So I don't understand this whole concept of non-compete. And it sounds like at the same time that we're talking about integrity, I'm hearing the same people being involved in drafting bylaw amendments with these provisions who are all on the different supposedly organizations that are supposedly in competition with each other. It's confusing in a lot of ways, and it makes one question, you know, the motive, quite honestly, of what's behind some of these provisions, because I don't hear how they're beneficial to community council.
We actually did strike out the conflict of interest or the non-compete at the request of Invest in Neighborhoods. That was one of the requests of Ann Bowen, was that we haven't.
Well, it's still on the agenda. I mean, it's still being called non-compete. It's on the agenda.
I'd like to finish my thought. Thank you.
Sure.
We did remove it. After discussion with myself and Elizabeth Bartley, I actually agree with her. It wasn't the right language to use. I did have a point of clarification on. You said you're still the president of MCURC's board. I'm a little bit confused because I thought you were term limited a year and a half ago. So, no, I'm actually asking truly because I'm a little bit confused.
Come on, Kate. Kate, you don't even know when I began on the board unless someone told you that, but don't do that. Don't do that. You know, you resort to personal attacks when you can't defend your position. So I'm going to thank you for doing that, because you're making a personal attack now, which tells me you have no good answer for some of the things that I've raised.
Actually, I do, because when we first started,
you have absolutely no say in how our organization is run. You have no say and no knowledge regarding my term. Very inappropriate. And standing rule for your organization. You're not supposed to be engaged in debate. Are you stepping aside as president to make your personal position known at this point?
If you would allow me to talk, when we first started having these discussions about bylaws, we actually pulled bylaws information from the state's websites for both what was out there for community council, what was out there for MCURC's board, what was out there for business chambers board, because we didn't want to have conflicting or competing information, which is what we do when we want to protect the integrity of the organization. We want to make sure that our bylaws are streamlined. People repeatedly ask the question about, have you had an attorney look at this? Have you had an attorney look at this? This is a draft. This is not a final document. As with anything, when we have what was going to be presented as a final document, which is why we open these things up for discussion, is to address any language that people feel is inappropriate, people feel like should be stricken from the record, which is why we have open dialogue, which is why everyone has been allowed to speak and to address their comments, to ask questions. That's why we open this up to the general body. This is not a dictatorship. This is not a personal attack. This is not my personal opinion. This is the appropriate opinion of the research that was done to ensure that we were not in conflict. This conversation has actually been brought up about the fact that other people were working on the different organizations' bylaws. It's actually been addressed and answered. I believe Charlie actually addressed that at the last meeting. What I would ask is that people do not interrupt other people when they are talking. It is very inappropriate and very rude. Miss Tony, you've had your hand up for quite some time. Go ahead.
This is probably something that, well, it's been a couple of minutes. I heard, and I was away from the phone again. I heard someone say something about serving on different boards. I wanted to ask, I guess I want to ask Elishia if she's still here. If I'm not a board member, but I'm a committee chair. If I were to commit to a certain contract for the youth that I'm working with, is it okay for me to leave in the beginning of that, in the middle of that, and go to beautification? I mean, can I do that? Or am I committed to that contract until it's completed? Am I making sense? Nobody's saying anything.
myself. Ms. Tony, can you repeat it? Because I'm not sure if that's addressed to MCC or to Elishia.
Oh, I said I wanted to ask Elishia. I didn't know. Well, either one. I mean, anybody that serves in that position. If I make a contract for the kids in the youth council and it's supposed to last 3 years, is there a problem with me walking away from that contract and getting into beautification on something on the same note? Is that an issue? Is it a problem? Is it not? Am I committed to stay and complete that contract? How does that work?
Elishia, are you here? Are you able to answer?
Anybody can answer that knows the rule. I don't know the rules. Even Elizabeth could answer that for me. It doesn't matter.
Elizabeth, are you able to answer that?
That's a contractual issue that I would need more information and a lot more understanding before I could address that.
Okay, thank you. It was just a thought I had. And I might get in touch with you to ask you a little bit more. Thank you very much.
Madam President.
Yeah, go ahead, Charlie.
Well, since there are some things that have been brought to our attention, we need to add specifically information from Ordinance 220-1989, non-discrimination clauses, and investigate the expansion of committee chairs being added to the conflict. So I move that we table this discussion until next month. And we'll, in the meantime, we will continue to seek further counsel to try and make sure that people are happier.
I've got a couple people, Charlie, that still have their hands raised that did not have a chance to speak. Okay. First, I'm gonna Elishia actually just pinged. It sounds like she had an answer to the question. So Elishia, go ahead.
No, Kate, I'm sorry. I saw where you were trying to unmute me and I have my sound down. I don't know what was asked.
Ms. Tony had a question about contracts. If you're entering a contract or if you're entering a contract, Ms. Tony, can you ask your question again?
Sorry, Ms. Tony.
Don't be sorry. The old ladies always get back to me. I asked if I committed to a contract for the youth as a youth chair, and the contract lasts 3 years. Can I leave that contract and go into a different contract? And I mean, just leave it, move over to beautification to address the same contract with them. Can I do that? Or, I mean, how does it work out? It has to do with some stuff I heard about this past week, and I'm just wondering how that works.
So first off, I think it'd be dependent upon the language in the contract. And so like it would take really, I mean, it's something that, because that doesn't really touch on MCURC, I can't advise on it, but I can look at it and tell you whether or not you need to speak to an attorney.
Because I said I might speak to Elizabeth about it too. I'm just asking a question.
It might be a really simple, solution, but it could also, depending on what language is in your contract, it might require an attorney's opinion or discussing with other board members. But I'm happy to look at it.
Okay. I said okay before when you didn't hear me, so I'm still okay.
I have my sound down.
I'm fine. I'll get with you or I'll get with Elizabeth, either one. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Tony. Elizabeth Bartley had a couple of high-level comments about conflict of interest before we finish up.
First, I thank you, Kate, and this is certainly the kinds of conversations that need to happen when y'all are working on bylaws, and it certainly seems like, oh my God, this will drag out forever, but you know what? It's important conversation, so it's good to have them. I wanted to just bring up why a conflict of interest, why this is important. That has nothing to do with Madisonville and MCURC. So when I come at these things, I've got a big broad overview of all these different community councils, and I come at it from a different point of view. So there have been and could potentially be conflicts of interest when you have at the officer level people serving on two different boards in the same neighborhood that are these very specifically the three pillars, as we call them, of the neighborhood organizations in terms of community development: the community council, the business, and the CDC, if y'all have one. Not everybody even has one of these. Looking at this has to do with protecting an organization going forward. Not what's going on right now, not what on last month, not whether it's we all get along great or we all hate each other and we're trying to stab each other in the back, because that's irrelevant. Okay, you have to look at it in the lens. And so, MCURC will look at this the same way when they look at their board, at their bylaws and their stuff like that. Every organization that is a non-for-profit, you are a business, you're a non-for-profit business, you have legal responsibilities, and that's what these fiduciary responsibilities are about. You have legal responsibility. And an important role of the board, as opposed to the membership, is to protect the organization, to minimize risk to the organization. Okay, and so there are plenty of community councils and other organizations that just say, if you are serving on the board here, you can't serve on the board there. And I think part of the problem is this has gotten way overcomplicated than it really needs to be. But also because y'all have, your neighbors, you work with each other, you live with each other, and you start bringing personalities in, and it's not about personalities. It's about what are we doing that is in the best interest of reducing risk to our organization. And I will say, in other neighborhoods, which will remain nameless, there have been very real issues about conflict of interest where, like the most usual example in the general sense of conflict of interest is when a board member is getting a lot of financial remuneration from the community council and it's not above board. They didn't do conflict of interest. It violates all the rules and everything else. But there's also been instances where literally one organization and another organization are trying to actually undermine each other in sneaky, awful, terrible ways. Like the kind of bad stuff that if lawyers got involved, it would be really, really ugly. So this isn't about paranoidly worrying about other people's bad intentions. It's about putting structures in place that reduce risk to the organization, yet at the same time allow for collaboration and allow for people to work with each other. Because yes, these are all small, lots of volunteers, okay? So it shouldn't be onerous and overly detailed, but it should be addressed. And so that's kind of, just a very, so it's not just y'all, right? Like stop thinking about it from the universe of Madisonville for a minute, okay? And just look at it that way. So there's ways to address it and ways to look at it. And when I spoken before about this, when I was talking to Kate the other day, there are very good things you already have in place, like your monthly meetings between the organizations, like being on each other's agendas and things like that. And so again, it can be, there should be something about conflict of interest. How, the level you want to go, whether it's just saying, okay, you can't be current simultaneously officers, board members, okay, at the same time, you know, but don't make it too onerous. Don't make it so that you are, again, crippling the ability of people to volunteer or the ability of people to, you know, life changes, right? You know, and just looking at it that way. So I do think there's some more work that needs to be done, but I think there's a bunch of more work to be done on a bunch of these different clauses. And so even though this has been like this, like long, intense conversation, it brings up all of these points. And that's the point of having these conversations is, okay, we're going to go back to the drafting board. We're going to go look at these. We're going to go look at these. We're going to look at these. But so I just, again, wanted to kind of in a big way address the conflict of interest and then say, let's all work on that a little bit and figure out how to put that together. That's it.
Yep. Thank you, Elizabeth, and I appreciate that. That's literally, you're one of the best resources for this kind of work. So it does matter. It does make a difference. You know, you had actually referenced a 6 month wait. We had initially thought 12 months was appropriate. The state didn't understand why we didn't have a waiting period between the various Madisonville organizations. We looked at the fact that the board terms for all the various organizations, the majority of them start January 1. What we didn't want to see was people leaving boards to join another board in the middle of a term, which then literally cripples all the various organizations. People are constantly jumping boards and not fulfilling the full board term. You're leaving all these different organization boards in a lurch. And that's something, again, that doesn't help Madisonville at all. It doesn't help our residents. It doesn't help city leadership and navigating. It ends up being very detrimental. Amanda, you had your hand up for quite some time.
I'm good. It's late. I'm good.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. At this point, Charlie has a motion on the floor to table discussion until next month. Is there a second for that?
Kathy.
Thank you. We'll go ahead and table discussion to next month. Brian is still here from the CRC. He had another earlier engagement. Brian, go ahead. The floor is yours.
Okay. Sorry, I was sitting there. Let me get to a place I'm not embarrassed of where I was doing my thing. So we got a new community center director. As a lot of you guys know, Jocelyn had been there for years, finally retired in November, and her last day was at the end of November. So we've been going without another community center director. The new lady that just started on Monday's name is Tessa Shows. She's awesome. She's got a lot of great things coming. She comes from the IRS and Apple before that. So she really wants to do a lot of like teen financial literacy and programs like that. That was a big one that she just spoke to me about. So we should have a lot of good things coming out of her. She wants to focus on sports as well. She's a former college basketball player. She'll be awesome for the community. She's very entertaining and outgoing, and she seems to jump right in right now. So we're real excited to have her. Other than that, we have a full summer camp. We're still under COVID protocols for the Center for Numbers, and that's a problem for some people because no one's wearing masks anymore, and they want to know why we're not able to meet in person and why we're not able to have big groups and stuff. But we have a lot of kids that are unvaccinated in the center, and we just have to hope that people understand that we're trying to keep the kiddos safe for the summer. So hopefully we'll be able to get back September. I don't think there's a meeting in August, so hopefully we'll be able to do that. And we're trying to get a bunch of new programs out, so look forward to that. And that should be it. Thank you.
Brian. Thanks, I appreciate it.
Yep.
All right, we're going to go back to the agenda right quick. We had no new business on the agenda. Does anybody have any new business to bring before the body? All right, there's no new business to bring before the body. We'll go ahead and open it up for general announcements. Several people still have their hands up from the previous conversation. Alex, go ahead.
Thank you. I think I just want to clarify Tony's, the excellent Tony Rosemary, question about her position. I understand there's officers and then there are committee chairs within the Community Council of Madisonville. And my understanding is that officers are elected and committee chairs are volunteer positions. So I don't understand there would be a conflict of interest whether Tony was on the MCC, for the kids, or she went to beautification, or she was at Arts, Parks and Recs, or anything. So I just wanted to clarify that for her and maybe for me, because I'm sort of curious about this conflict of interest when really the chairs are just volunteer positions, people who are willing to give their time to be in charge or be part of a committee. So that, I just want to clarify that for maybe Elizabeth, for you, for anybody else. But that's my take on that. Thank you.
Thanks, Alex. Anne, you had your hand up.
I do. Charlie made a motion and it was seconded to postpone this discussion until next month. Did we have a vote on that motion?
No, you know what? We actually did not.
Oh, good. Thank you.
Thank
you, Anne.
Before you proceed with that, may I finish my other comments, please?
Sure, go ahead.
I wanted to thank Elizabeth Bartley for being on the call. Elizabeth, I know you to be a super guru woman, and I'm just disappointed that you weren't brought in until the very end. And I hope that you are able sooner rather than later to talk with both Charlie and Kate to give our leaders some good guidance. On the bullet points that were presented last month and that are all out on social media, then we had tonight in the chat for this Zoom, the new changes with the yellow, and then mid-meeting, there were edits being made to it and then reinstated and then read. We have lots of versions. So I'm not making a motion, but I'm just throwing it out as a suggestion that tonight's proposal for the amendments that were proposed, the ones in yellow, it seems like it would be easier to have that withdrawn and to present a new one next month and to furnish that to the membership in advance of the meeting. Otherwise, from a records, well, you still have to keep it from a records keeping standpoint, but otherwise, attendees next month will have to look at the bulleted list on the website or social media. They'll have to look at the edits that were made at tonight's and then whatever new document might come next month. So that's a suggestion that we start clean next month, but not a motion unless you want to do it.
What I will recommend to Charlie Ann, that's a great point, and I know I'd sent it to Amanda to put out with the other agenda items this afternoon. What we'll do, and Charlie, what we can do is literally do highlighted bulleted version, and then tonight's version would be version 1. The next draft then would be version 2. That way we keep them for records and everybody knows that they're very clean and they're numbered for people to go back and look at to see what the changes were that came out of the conversation this evening. That's a great point, Anne. Thank you. Sarah, you had your hand up as well.
Yes, thank you. And my comment is sort of along the lines with Anne's. So I appreciate that you'll put these different versions out there. Could you also make sure they go on the website? Because sometimes things are only put on social media and not on the website, and it's easier to read them from the website, in my opinion. So seeing them on the website would be great. And then in terms of next steps, could you or Charlie please share when the next bylaws committee meeting is? Because I think it's clear from this meeting that we have a lot of experienced people and a lot of people who care about this issue, and perhaps there will be some who would like to attend that next meeting.
I will confirm with Bishop Brown and he'll get that out there and we'll get that out there here within the week.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Ann, did you have another comment or are you just raising your hand? Because
I do have another comment. Just wanted to remind you about the vote. And I noticed that Bishop Brown has not been at our meetings for the last several months. Is Charlie now the chair of this bylaws committee, or is?
No, he is not. Bishop typically will call in. Bishop has actually been traveling the country, actually teaching. But he has been very invested in the bylaws conversations, as well as attending the meetings when his schedule is allowable. I will be very candid and very forthcoming with COVID this past year. I think everybody's been given a pass in terms of not only board members, but officers in terms of being available. It's been a very trying year for everyone. And so we're just trying to basically just get things defined and get things worked through the end of the year.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't matter to me. Charlie has been the face of the bylaws, so I was just curious.
The only thing that I've been the face of is the ugly mug on a Zoom group.
And we appreciate.
No, I can, Ann, I can type.
Thank you, Charlie.
And I was actually about to ask you if you didn't have a question. I was going to put your hand down because we didn't have a vote to suspend the conversation. So if everybody can just raise your proverbial hand in the, there we go. If everyone in favor of suspending conversation through next month. Thank you, Kathy. Thank you, Carrie. All right, we'll continue the conversation next month. If there are no other general body announcements, I'll wait for everybody to put their hands down. Lower all hands. If there are no other, looks like somebody's. Go ahead, Ms. Beverly, you had an announcement? Ms. Beverly?
I was trying to lower my hand.
Oh, okay.
That's all.
Okay. If there are no other announcements, we'll consider the meeting adjourned.
Thank you, everyone.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah.
Bye.